Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to episode 18 of the Fourth String Sports Podcast. We've got a great episode lined up here for you. We're going to talk primarily about the reigning Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. But before we do that, we're going to talk about some developments in the NBA with a certain all-star deciding to sit out. We're going to talk about something that we hinted at earlier in a couple episodes ago, which was a top recruit going to an historically black college or university. We're also going to talk about that football team in the District of Columbia who's finally decided to change their name. But before we do all that, and before we cover the Chiefs, after we do all that, and then before we cover the Chiefs, we're going to get to our Listum episode or Listum segment, the What the Fuck Were You Thinking segment. We're still waiting for kind of suggestions on that name. We've also got our What a Putt segment at the very end of the episode. I appreciate everybody for tuning in and listening. You can follow us on YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, Reddit, Facebook, Twitter, the whole fucking 9 yards at Fourth String Sports Podcast, and you can email us at fourthstringsp@gmail.com, FOURTH string sp@gmail.com. I'm your host, Brady. Got my co-hosts Mitch and Skylar here, as well as our guest coming back for the second episode, Mr. TJ Foffel. Yes.
Timmy!
So before we get to all of that kind of stuff, let's talk about, we've hinted at the NBA bubble. It looks more and more realistic that at least a lot of the star players are going to show up there. Guys like Giannis, Jimmy Butler showed up at the Heat practice at 3:30 in the morning when the practice started at 10. So all that stuff is happening. But interesting development, Victor Oladipo for the Indiana Pacers has decided to sit out the bubble season, as well as Mitch even informed me that Boston Celtics forward Gordon Hayward will be leaving in September when his child is born. And once you leave the bubble, you're not allowed to come back. So those are some pretty big hits to some solid Eastern Conference teams that I don't think any of us expected them to go to the finals, but at least could do some damage to possible teams they played, whether it was the Sixers or the Raptors or the Bucks. Those are big losses for those teams.
Yeah, especially with Gordon Hayward. I mean, at first, he wasn't really that a big of addition for the team, but I feel like once he's gotten healthy and Kyrie left, he's really gotten a role and really is a pillar for that team right now. And I think with him gone, it could definitely hurt their chances a lot.
As a Boston fan in general, I kind of upset. I did see something about I didn't think he was going to have to stay out. I think he was trying to work out a deal where he could come back if the Celtics were still in the playoffs at that point. But again, that kind of takes away the whole purpose of the bubble.
Yeah.
But I'm not as concerned if it was oh crap, I can't think of his name.
If it was Jaylen Brown, or
if it was Marcus Smart, or Jaylen Brown, I'd be a lot more concerned, because those two have come up have leaps and bounds defensively this season. Whereas Marcus Smart could be in consideration for defensive player of the year, how well he's playing. And I think he can guard anyone. I love Marcus Smart as just a defensive player in general. It's wonderful. The small ass dude posting up against Giannis, and I love it. But I think that the Celtics should be okay, because they still have 3 other players that are averaging 20 points a game.
Yeah.
And they can get some production. Marcus Smart can go off. You can get some production from some of your young guys. I think they should be okay. I'm more worried about Victor Oladipo and the Pacers, because we saw what happened last year after Oladipo got injured, what that did to that Pacers team. And without having some of their scorers that they did last year to kind of keep them afloat, it's going to be rough, I think, for the Pacers.
Yeah, it is. And I'm so upset because I've loved Victor Oladipo since he came out of Indiana. I thought when he went to the Thunder originally that this was going to be great. And then I think he spent some time in the Magic, and then he went to the Thunder, whatever the route is. But when he ended up back in Indiana, I was so excited because I thought this guy could absolutely light up the floor. And then he gets hurt, and they don't get him. They get knocked out in the playoffs in the first round, I think, to Boston last season. And then he comes back, and I'm like, fuck. So now he's back. He's going to team up with Malcolm Brogdon, who's already a fantastic offensive and defensive player. And I was like, this Pacers team can do serious damage in the East. Do I see them beating the Bucks? No. Do I see them maybe even beating the Celtics? No. But they could take both those teams to 6. Easy. All right? And now he's not playing on top of Brogdon testing positive for COVID, so we don't know what his situation showing up into the bubble is going to be. And, it's so upsetting because I want to see the Pacers do well because the team is there. Sabonis is great. they don't have Bogdanovich anymore, but like the team is there for them to succeed. And now Oladipo's going to sit out again. And it's just a shame because I want to see what this Pacers team can actually put forth in the playoffs.
And it's like a continuation of like negative things for the Pacers. Because then when they had Paul George and all them, they were great going into the playoffs. And then his leg when he snapped that, and then they fell off. And then no, but then he came back, and when they came back, it was like a resurgence for the team. And they were on the up again. They made the playoffs, and then he got traded to Oklahoma. Then they got Victor, and it was like a good replacement for them. And then they made the playoffs, and then he got hurt, and then they fell off, and they got back up when he came there. And then when you pair him up with Brogdon, who Brogdon in Milwaukee was insane, and then he comes over to Indiana and he's got more freedom. That was like a duo in the East that you were kind of, I wouldn't say you were terrified of, but like you took notice of them because those two guys are elite scorers almost at this point. And now they're
Brogdon's
both
great defensively too.
Yeah, he's probably one of the most efficient players in recent memory. And now not only is he gone, and Victor's gone.
Yeah. So, quick question: which injury was worse to look at? Paul George breaking his leg, or Kevin Ware in the NCAA tournament for Louisville snapping his leg just right off the bone? Because I remember watching that live. And like,
yeah, Brady, weren't you?
I saw him both.
I think we were. Yeah. I think we were together, Brady. When
oh my God, I don't remember, but like I just remember that, and then the game stopped. And the thing was like it wasn't in the middle of the screen when it happened, but then you just see him on the ground, and his leg is shattered in half.
It's the whole reason. I still think it's the whole reason Louisville won that fucking tourney after. Because it was. Oh God.
I'm going to say Paul George just because you can see it. Like, it's just him and somebody else on a fast break. Now, zoomed in, though, when they focus on it,
Kevin
I don't
want
to see
it's
Kevin
blood
Ware.
everywhere. It's straight out of, like, Final Destination.
No,
it's got to be Kevin Ware.
No, it's like
Kevin Ware.
Yeah, Kevin Ware.
It's just like you're sitting at it, you're like, because, like, with Paul George, you're like, okay, yeah, his leg isn't supposed to look like that. With Kevin Ware, you're like, holy shit. Like,
but then, like, so now that we're on the subject, just because I'm thinking about it, like, do you guys remember Marshawn Lattimore, the halfback for South Carolina?
Oh,
this is like a couple years ago. Where his knee
story
breaks, like, as he gets tackled, and you just see his knee just go limp and just, like, fly over the side of him. It was so well
bad.
With
South Carolina, too. That injury. And
it was a sad story.
So great. It really was, and that's so upsetting. But, you know, I mean, at least praise to Paul George for coming back and being a title contender even still. So
one that my mom always points to is early 2000s when Nebraska had Eric Crouch. He was playing against Kansas State, and the Kansas State linebacker took his helmet and turned, and his head went with it. And it was just like, for some reason, how he was able to not get, like, break his neck. He didn't, but yeah.
God, no, that shit's – sports is scary, but God, do we love it. So then just some other interesting news here. What is his name? What's the McCord Maker? The number, I think 17 overall recruit decides to forego some of the far larger universities and decides to play at the historically black college and university college at Howard University. Howard, which was a team who was, I think, 4-22 the previous season. This is not a large or very well-known program. But we hinted at it in a previous episode where we talked about there's a chance we're going to see some of these, especially in light of everything that's happening, some of these players going to these smaller but historically black college or universities. And he was the first one to do it. Yeah, he's not the number one overall recruit, but he's a great player. And he's going to put fans in the stands at Howard University. Is this worrisome to you guys, to some of the bigger programs, to the Kentuckys and to the Dukes and the North Carolinas who had offers out to this guy, that he decides to go to a lesser program, but because it's a historically black college or university?
If I was one of these top schools like Kansas, Duke, Kentucky, I'd be more worried about the G League with the NBA, or even them going overseas and doing things over there, because I think that a lot of players are like, okay, well, I'm projected to, like, why go, like, because they're not going back for a college education. They're not doing it. They're going to go to the NBA, and they're projected to go to the NBA. So why not go overseas, get some professional experience, and make
Get
some money
paid
while
to
doing
do
it.
it if
And
you
get
play
paid to
in
do it.
Europe.
But get paid a lot of money to do it.
Yeah.
Like, so I think that's a little bit more worrisome that you're seeing some of the top recruits, like last year's top recruit decided to do that. Or one of the top recruits decided to do that.
A few
Especially
of them
with,
I mean, look at LaMelo Ball. Like, love him or hate him, but
Yeah.
he's played in Australia for a couple
well,
of seasons.
that had more to do with his father than anything else, in my opinion.
You know, still.
Because I don't think he wanted to go play basketball in Latvia. I mean, for God's sakes.
Lithuania. Yeah.
Oh, Lithuania.
You know, one of
They're
those
like
dumb
right next to each
countries.
other. I'm
Same
sorry.
country.
Don't say that to Latvians. They'll fuck
More
you
like
up.
Loservania.
But no, I think that's more worrisome to top schools than like going to historically black colleges, because then they're still going the college route, which I think I personally want to see more prospects do, because I just like seeing them in school for a little bit longer. It makes basketball a little bit more exciting. But you know what? You do them. Like, you do you. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on if this is going to be a trend or if McCord Maker is just an outlier for it. So I'll have to wait and see if they become a threat. But I think overall, between overseas, the G League, and if the HBCUs start poaching these 5-star recruits, those together, I think, is definitely a threat to the NCAA. But yeah, I'm going to have to wait and see if the HBCU is a threat. I agree with Skylar. I think like the G League and overseas is more of a threat to NCAA.
Yeah, I think the overseas actually is probably the biggest competitor to the big D1 programs, just because not only is it paid, but they get to play the way they want to. Marshall, they don't have to fit them, or like a well-known system like at Duke, where they've got, you know, Coach K, who's been there forever, or Calipari at Kentucky. Like they have their ways, and no matter how good you are, you do it there. Whereas if they go overseas, they know they're not going to forever, maybe a year or two where they get paid to play basketball, but then they get to do it their way and they get to play how they want to. So then scouts can go and see them, compared to them scoring 18 points in a Kentucky offense. They can go score 30 points for the Philippines or something. I don't know, some overseas team. So
I guess what I would argue in conjunction to that is that realistically, like, how many players are getting offered chances to go to the G League or to go play in Europe? Like, we're talking about what caps 20 players realistically are getting offered to go make decent money in Lithuania or Latvia or Italy or whatever. And there's even and there's nothing wrong with that route, because there's been some great college players who have ended up after college going there. Like Ethan Happ for Wisconsin's playing in Italy right now. Like we talked about Steven Jackson and stuff. He's finished his career out in China. Jeremy Lin is out there in China right now. Say that again.
Jimmy Fredette. He was out overseas.
Jimmer Fredette, yeah. Overseas for how long? So like playing overseas, there's nothing wrong with that. My thing is like when you talk about some of those programs like Duke and like Kentucky and like North Carolina, they don't have the greatest track record with African American athletes. And as we see kind of a level of, you know, whatever you call it, like wokeness with those athletes like that, I think that this could be a trend that could be worrisome. Now, obviously, Howard and HBCU schools are still within the NCAA. So they're still living within that form of, you know, I call it disrespect for student athletes. But I think that this could be worrisome, because there's a higher chance that the 5-star guys are going to go to the G League, but the 4-star guys, the 3-star guys, the preferred walk-ons at these schools, these are the guys that programs are built on, realistically.
Yeah.
Because so many programs have the one and dones, that you need the guys who are going to stay there for 2 or 3 or 4 years. And if those guys who are going to stay there for 2 or 3 or 4 years are going to start going to the Howards or the William and Marys or the other, you know, the Southern universities or the Jackson States or other HBCUs, that could be worrisome to some of the larger programs.
Yeah, and I think something that this also could possibly stall is the idea of the Power 5 splitting off. Because if you're getting all of these players that are going to historically black colleges, and then you get the Gramblings and the Jackson States and the Howards all of a sudden becoming good and giving, like, and not just blowing out their own competition and their own conferences, but going and being competitive against some of these bigger schools. Because if this becomes a trend and they become better and they get more funding, then they will be competitive. And that could stall the Power Five trying to split off on their own. But that would need that would need a huge influx of talented players going to historically black colleges. But I mean, I think if anything that could threaten that. But I think that college basketball is safe for right now, but I think that they need to take a hard look at themselves and see what they need to do.
There's been no talks of resuming March Madness or anything. We're basically just throwing the season away, and so the realistically college basketball is not going to come back till I believe October as is. So it's still quite a ways away. But let's also move on to the large developing story across the sports world, whether it's the Cleveland Indians or the Washington Redskins, and that is the mass call right now for name changes. Now, we're talking about the Kansas City Chiefs today, who have been able to weather that storm a little bit more, I think, just because their name isn't so blatantly racist like Washington or like the Redskins are, or even possibly the Indians. Now, also keep in mind, we're four white guys talking about this, so we don't really have as much of a right, I would say. But I think we're all in agreement that the term Redskin is inherently racist and that the change to the name Redskin has been coming a long time. One thing to keep in mind is that Washington was not always called the Redskins. They were originally called the Braves. And then in the 30s, they chose to change it to the Redskins. So now there's talks after large pushes from Pepsi, the official drink of the NFL, Nike, the official sportswear of the NFL, and FedEx, the company that owns FedEx Field, where the Redskins play, for the Redskins to change their name. And it looks more and more like they will change their name. Do you guys agree with the Washington Redskins changing their name?
Oh, yeah. This should have been done like decades ago. Like you said, it's a really racist term. The logo that they have is racist. You can even go watch the South Park episode where they talk about it.
Well, isn't that the funniest fucking thing is that South Park hit that right on the fucking head like 5 years ago?
Yeah.
Well, that was right after they lost. Well, it's because the Redskins lost their
trademark.
Their trademark. And so
they lost it for it was like 1972 to 1989. Like they had lost a trademark for like a certain period.
Yeah, and so that allowed everybody to like make fun of them for it.
But yeah, I mean, thanks for calling the Washington Redskins. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
They hit it on the fucking head.
But yeah, I definitely think it needs to be changed, and I don't know if Snyder's going to pull through with it. I mean, to me, he's the worst owner of the NFL, and I have to see it before I believe it. But yeah, I definitely think it should be changed. And like me and you were talking about when it first came out, I definitely am for the popular names that are coming out right now, like the Washington Red Tails or the Washington Hogs. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, I'd have to say it's like this has been a long time coming. I mean, honestly, when they lost the trademark, they should have changed. I mean, and that's when Dan Snyder was like, "We're never ever going to change because I'm an old racist fuck." So it really took the three companies that could hurt him the most: PepsiCo, Nike, and FedEx, all going, "No, you need to change your name." And I also agree with the names. I think that if they wanted to do the least amount of work, they could call it the Warriors, change the logo a little bit, but keep their color scheme. And like we said, he has connections with Golden State, so I mean that would make sense too. But I also think that I like Red Tails. I think that it works. I mean, the fact that it's still the Tuskegee Airmen, it has nothing to do with Washington D.C. I mean, could be argued, but I mean, we'll see. We'll see what has to happen.
What do the Falcons have to do with Atlanta?
Well, and what do the Lions have to do with Detroit?
What do Bengals have to do with Cincinnati?
Exactly. Like I had that argument with some people, and they were like, "Oh, I don't." I'm like, it's like change. Like it's a long time coming. It would literally be like having a team called the N-words. Like that is literally what it is. Yeah. It's a racial slur, and like we that needed to be discussed and changed a long time ago. It's just because Native Americans are such a minority that's put down upon in our country that we don't even talk about what's insensitive to them anymore.
And like, don't get me wrong. If they sit down with the group of local Native Americans, and the group of local Native Americans votes, keep the name. Okay, that's keep the name then, right? They have the support. But I hate people who are like, you can't just rebrand names. Well, it's like, now granted, these are colleges, but it's like North Dakota used to be the Fighting Sioux. Now they're the Fighting Hawks. Miami of Ohio used to be the Redskins. Now they're the Red Hawks. Okay. St. Bonaventure College used to be the St. Bonaventure Brown Indians, and now they're just the Bonnies. Like, it's not that difficult to actually change a team name. A great Wisconsin reference is Marquette. Marquette used to be the Warriors, and there was mass protests when Marquette announced that they were going to change their name to the Golden Eagles. And in fact, the story is that a few people offered the University of Marquette millions of dollars to keep the name Warriors. And Marquette said, no, we're not going to do it. And they changed the name to the Golden Eagles.
Fuck Marquette.
There's nothing wrong with changing a name. Like, we see teams do it all the time. We've seen more teams change their city recently in the NFL than we have, like, ever, right?
Yeah.
There's no issue with Washington changing their name as long as they change it the right way. Like, if they do Warriors, but they still keep the headdresses and the spears and the feathers and everything, you're not really changing anything. I like the Red Tails. I think the Red Tails is cool. I like the Hogs. I like just something, just if you want to keep the R, just call yourself the Washington Representatives because it's DC. Like, who gives a fuck? Just
Too
not
long.
the Redskins.
It is too long.
I don't think it's too long. I mean, if
I was thinking like the
Buccaneers is okay, I think.
Yeah, but you can call them the
Representatives-
Bucks. What would you call
Yeah.
them? Like the refs?
the refs.
The
Yeah.
refs.
Yeah, that doesn't. Yeah.
Call them the Washington. I only say that because they already have the R logo, so that way
Oh,
they can
okay.
keep the R logo. That was really it. That's the one thing that I.
I think that they just need to do a whole new rebranding scheme. I think they need some new fucking colors up in there. I think they need some new shit. But it's Dan Snyder. He's a cheap fuck.
Yeah.
So we'll
True.
see.
So
Yeah, just go out Madden and do the NFL team creator.
Yeah, just move them to Ireland and call them like the Celtic Circles.
Celtic
or whatever
Tigers,
they're
I think
called.
it's-
Celtic
Yeah.
Tigers, some bullshit like that. Move them to Mexico City. Call them the Desperados. Who gives a fuck? So
I'm down for that.
now let's move on to the "What the fuck were you thinking?" segment. This is part 2. Now this list comes courtesy of Mitch. So Mitch, what is the list that we are talking about today?
All right. So this list comes inspired from a few months ago when there was like nothing going on and The Last Dance was going on and people were giving out their top 10 NBA all-time lists. So with that, going from that, we're going to do our NBA top 10 all-time.
All right. Well, Mitch, you chose the segment, so why don't you start us off with your top 10 all time?
All right.
Are you going 1 to 10 or are you going 10 to 1?
I'm going to go 10 to 1.
All right, good. Have the suspense. I want to know who your top
Yeah.
3 are.
All right. So, number 10, we got one of the greatest Milwaukee Bucks ever, and that is Oscar Robertson.
I thought it was me. God damn it.
No, don't worry, you're number 1.
Yeah, fuck, I fucking should be, damn it.
Number 9, we got Mr. Larry Bird. At
Okay.
number 8, we've got Wilt Chamberlain. Number 7, we got Diesel. 6, Bill Russell.
You got to say his actual name because there's people who don't know the name.
We got Shaquille O'Neal at 7.
Okay.
6, we got Bill Russell.
Got it.
5, Magic Johnson. 4, the late Kobe Bryant. 3, LeBron James. 2, Luol Alcindor or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And number 1, Black Jesus, Captain Marvel, Superman, GOAT, Mr. June, Black Cat, Money, His Airness, MJ, Air Jordan, Michael Jordan.
When you said Black Jesus, for some reason, I jumped to Jesus Shuttlesworth and thought you put Ray Allen as number 1. I was like, no way, you just do that.
Okay, so who is number 9 for you, Mitch?
Number 9 was Larry Bird.
Oh,
I have
sorry.
an issue with you putting Larry Bird so low. I also have an issue with you putting Wilt Chamberlain really low. But I'll say that I have an issue with you putting Larry Bird really low. Because, like, when you talk about Magic and Kareem at their height, they were at their height, like, together. Like, Larry Bird didn't have a Kareem to play with. Yeah, like, the Celtics team were good. Like, they had Havlicek and they had other guys. The Celtics teams were good. But that was Larry. It was Larry Bird versus Magic and James Worthy and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And the fact that Larry won championships against them, to me, I would put Larry Bird a whole lot higher than number 9. I'd also put Wilt Chamberlain a lot higher, but we can get to my list when we talk about that. That's the only like main issue that I have. Other than that, I completely agree with your list. I think we agree on. I think we have only one other person. There's one person on my list who isn't on your list. So
Oh, okay.
Don't worry, Mitch. We have the same people.
Oh,
Did you?
okay.
There you go. TJ, you
Oh,
go.
all right. So, number 10, we have, Oscar Robinson. Great ice cream. Oscars, love it. Number 9, the big man Shaq. So we're pretty similar there, Mitch, so far. However, I got Bill Russell at number 8.
Okay.
I've got Larry Bird at 7. Kobe at 6.
Wow.
Wilt at 5. I know, I love Kobe, but I put him there. So Wilt at 5, and then pretty much the same. I had Magic, LeBron, Kareem, and MJ.
Magic, LeBron. Okay. I mean, yeah, kind of same point to Mitch. I think you and me actually have Larry Bird, I think, at the same place. You said 7, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's where I have him too.
The only reason I have him there is just because I saw this on Instagram the other day. I'm like, this dude's so good. When he scored, what was it, like 42 points left-handed only?
Well, because he knew he had a big game the next night, and he didn't want to make his right hand tired.
So he looked at the bench and said left hand.
Yeah, and he just did that. I'm actually astonished that both of you have Oscar Robertson on your list. Like, I have him on there too. I thought I was going to have to debate the hell out of that with everybody. So I'm astonished that you guys have Oscar Robertson
we got
on the
you.
list.
We got you.
I'm excited about that. All right, Skylar, why don't we rattle yours off?
One sec. I had to rearrange some things real quick because I forgot a player. And I was like, oh, shit. Why don't you go? I'm figuring this out.
Great. All right, so number 10, I have Oscar Robertson. Number 9, I have Shaq. Number 8, I have Tim Duncan.
Wow. Okay.
I had him on there. Originally.
Number 7, I have Larry Bird. Number 6, I have Magic. Number 5, I have Bill Russell. Number 4, I have LeBron. Number 3, I have Wilt Chamberlain. Number 2, Michael Jordan. And number 1 at Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
I mean, it seems pretty.
So you have Kobe's not on your list?
Kobe's not on my list.
Kobe's not on your list?
Whoa.
When I had
boy.
Okay. When I had to look at
Get him, TJ.
pure dominance of the mid 2000s range, I felt that Tim Duncan and the Spurs were probably a little bit more dominant than Kobe was. And a part of that is because when Tim Duncan lost Dave Robinson, the Spurs still won championships. And I think if we want to talk about help in winning championships, anybody would take Shaq over Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili. Any day of the week, people would take Shaq. Tim Duncan made and dominated the West at a sneakily good power forward position. This was the guy who had to take on Dirk Nowitzki year in and year out in the West, and he won. This was a guy who had to take on Kobe year in and year out in the West, and he won. This is a guy who in his old age took on LeBron in back-to-back finals, took him to 7, and then beat him in 5, I think, the following finals. And yeah, a large part of that was Kawhi Leonard, no doubt about that. But Tim Duncan was dominant at his position. And when he had to go up against the other dominant teams in the West in the early 2000s, whether it was the Suns or it was the Lakers or it was the Mavericks or it was any team like that, the Spurs and Tim Duncan dominated, to me, in my opinion, more so than Kobe Bryant and the Lakers did. Kobe toward the end of his career was missing the playoffs. Tim Duncan never missed the playoffs as a Spur. Not once. And you could argue coaching and you could argue whatever. But when it came down to it and I had to put somebody on my list from that time frame, I went with Tim Duncan over Kobe Bryant.
Well, you can have both of them on your list, you asshole.
So then who else do I pull? So of everybody else that I put on my list,
Oscar Robertson.
Everyone else on here has agreed. Who comes off the list?
Oscar Robertson. If it's between Oscar. Yeah, take Oscar out. If that means not having Kobe on your list, take Oscar out.
No. You don't take Oscar Robertson off the list here.
Yeah, you do. That means Kobe's not on it.
Take Bird off.
This is Nebraska all over again, Brady.
No,
this is Nebraska all over again. You are totally ignoring the 90s, which is the dominance of Kobe. And even then, to your point, okay, yeah, he had less, but he still won a championship. And what was that, 08? With one of the best Celtics, a really, really good Celtics team, the Big Three, the thing that just started super teams. He beat them with nobody. He single-handedly beat the Celtics. a really good Celtics team. And yes, I'll give you Tim Duncan took LeBron to 7 and beat him in 5. But he also had.
But here's my seed to you, right? How many times did Tim Duncan beat LeBron James in the finals? 2 of the 3 times they played.
Oh, sorry.
So
Yeah,
everybody
LeBron-
on here has put LeBron higher than Kobe. So if Tim Duncan took on LeBron 2 times in the finals and beat him, and probably should have beat him the 3rd time if it wasn't for Jesus Shuttleworth hitting a 3 in Game 6.
But Brady, it's not
What
just.
then what leaves off that? So like I
Brady,
know
it's
I will
not
not
just-
remove Oscar
it's
Robertson
not-
from the list because in his ultimate season, this is a dude who career game stats 25.7 points, 7.5 rebounds, 9.5 assists, a steal per game.
No, I
Per game.
No, I
Oscar
understand the
Robertson put that shit
amazingness
up.
that is Oscar Robertson, but when we're talking about Kobe Bryant, when we're talking about one of the people that has that like single-handedly took over the NBA after MJ left, when everybody was worried about what was going to happen to the NBA after MJ left,
Yep.
he single-handedly took it on and ushered it into the next generation. I get Tom.
I would argue against that because there was not a large gap from the time MJ left to LeBron James showed up. There was
Okay,
like
but-
a 3-season gap, pretty much from the time that MJ wasn't at his peak to the time that LeBron.
I think it's like
showed
more
up.
like a 7.
I think it was 4
Yeah,
years.
that's
Was it
your
4 years, something like
4 or
that. I
5
don't remember.
years.
I think he played
Way
3
more than
seasons
that,
in
bro.
Washington. It was 3 seasons he played in Washington, so that was up until like.
Yeah, but he
we
wasn't
don't
good for
count
any
that.
of them. We don't count the Washington season.
Oh no! If you want to look at it, if you want to look at his fucking stats in Washington, they're actually pretty fucking good.
Okay, but
So-
the team did nothing. But
You're absolutely right. So then Kobe lost Shaq and won how many more championships?
but 1, 2.
2. So he won 2 without Shaq, and that's props. Like that's fantastic. Great to him. Okay, but Kobe had multiple years in his career, especially towards the end of the career, where the Lakers were missing the playoffs.
Because he
And
had
Duncan, at the end of his career, the Spurs were winning championships.
how many
Yeah, 'cause they had
coaches did Kobe,
Popovich.
how many coaches did Kobe have in that
Kobe
span?
had Phil Jackson.
That doesn't
I don't-
fucking mean shit.
So then
Yeah,
why does it matter?
have you
if
seen
Popovich
Phil
has-
Jackson at the
if
end of
Tim
his
Duncan
career?
has Popovich.
Yeah,
Look at
no,
look
no.
at Popovich now. Is Popovich still a fantastic head coach? No, the Spurs are sub 500 at best. So why are we going to hold Popovich against Duncan, but we're not going to hold Jackson against Kobe?
Because,
I don't think it comes down.
because you're
to
talking
the-
about Popovich in the height of his career. If we were talking about like 90s Phil Jackson and we're like, this is the Phil Jackson that
Take it away.
we're talking about Phil Jackson in the 90s, we're talking about at the height of his career, you have an argument. But we're not. We're talking about Phil Jackson at the end of his career when he got exiled to the fucking Knicks and did shit with them, okay? If you, like I'm saying, Popovich was at the height of his career. He is one of the all-time best coaches that we have ever seen. I'm not saying that Phil Jackson wasn't, but I'm saying that Greg Popovich, and he also had Kawhi, who would have been the second best player on the Lakers at the time that Kobe was missing the playoffs.
I'm sorry. Was that a question? I missed.
Yeah, like who would have been the second best player on the roster when
On the Spurs?
for the Lakers when playoffs. Who was
At
the
a world
second best
peace.
player?
Lamar Odom.
I rest
who
my
won
case.
Sixth Man of the
I rest
Year.
my case.
Any other number of lists like that team wasn't a bad team. Pau Gasol at his height was a dominant power forward
And they were making the
in
playoffs.
the NBA.
And
And they were making the playoffs, and then they were losing to the Spurs.
Yeah,
in the
because Tim
playoffs.
Duncan and
I-
Kawhi
I'm sorry.
Leonard.
I'm sorry. No, no. Kobe deserves to be in your top 5, and
When you talk about the
that-
utter domination of the West, the reason that Steve Nash never won a championship, large reason of that is because of the Spurs. The reason that Dirk only
And the
got
Lakers.
one shot at the made 2 championships, but only won one. Large reason of that was the Spurs.
and the Lakers.
We talk about but you're right. A large reason that was the Lakers too, but a large reason why the Lakers weren't making the championships was because of the Spurs. All right. So like I look at it as if I'm building a franchise, an organization, who do I want to successfully build around? Tim Duncan, who not once in his career missed the playoffs, or Kobe Bryant, who's had some absolutely fantastic season. I'm not saying that Kobe Bryant isn't a fantastic player. This is
Obviously,
obviously
you're
a
not.
personal opinion list, okay? But if I'm trying to build an organization and I'm saying, okay, who had a better longevity of career? Tim Duncan had a better longevity of career. He won just as many championships as Kobe did. All right. He didn't lose as many championships as Kobe did. All right.
Hey, Brady.
And the
just to
championships
say,
he did lose, they should have won, in all honesty.
Brady, between 2000 and 2010, the Lakers were in the NBA Finals 7 times.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And how many did they win?
1 sec. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 of the 7.
From what years? What was that? 2002?
2000 to 2010.
Okay, so you're talking about the early 2000s where they three-peated,
Yes.
and then when they went back-to-back. And so, yeah, there was times they lost in there where they lost to the Pistons and stuff. But
And then here's who represented the West. Here's who represented the West after the Lakers.
Mhm.
Dallas in 2011,
Mhm.
OKC in 2012,
Mhm.
the Spurs in 13 and 14,
Mhm.
and then Warriors.
Yeah, so the Warriors.
So
have been
in a
dominant, but
20
Tim
year
Duncan
in a
retired 3
20
seasons ago.
in a 20-year period, the San Antonio Spurs made the finals 1, 2, 3, 5 times, whereas in a 10-year period, the Lakers
not
made
5
it
times. It would have been
7.
more than 5 times.
In 20 years, from 2000 to 2019, they made it 5 times.
And how many did the Lakers make? 7?
7 in 10
How many
years.
did the Lakers make after Shaq left?
2. No, 3.
3.
And they won 2 of them.
You're right. And they won 2 of them, okay? But Tim Duncan and the Spurs were just as dominant in the West. Like
No,
Tim Duncan and the Spurs.
Kawhi.
Tim Duncan and the Spurs. No,
'Cause they had
fuck that-
Kawhi.
Fuck that fucking noise. Without Kawhi, fuck that fucking noise, okay? Because Kawhi was a great player. You're absolutely right. There's no doubt about that. But why do we sit there and say that fucking Lamar Odom won Sixth Man of the Year the year that the Lakers won their last championship? Pau
Because then he
Gasol
did
was an
nothing
all-star.
the rest
Who
of his
gives a
time
shit about the
there.
6th man of the year?
It's a huge fucking award. Fucking
But
Kawhi
Brady,
Leonard
but-
wasn't starting on the Spurs the first time they met in the
But he
fucking
was
championship.
the reason that LeBron got shut down in the finals. When
Yeah,
we're
buddy.
talking,
But we're not talking about the fact that Tim Duncan went mano a mano with one of the big 3 and Chris Bosh and outplayed him in those 2 finals.
and Kobe single-handedly beat the big 3 against the Celtics.
Yeah, that's not a big fucking 3. That was a big fucking 3 that won 1 fucking championship on a terrible contract for Kevin Garnett and then traded everybody to the Nets, and look at how fucking good the Nets did. All right? That
Exactly.
fucking Celtics team
Celtics
is not
won
a-
that fucking thing.
The Celtics. So if that terrible
Let's
big
move
3
on.
beat Kobe
Let's
in a fucking
move on.
finals,
This is Nebraska
then
all
come
over
on.
again.
All right, so then who's your top 10, Skylar?
My top 10? 10 Shaq, 9 Larry, 8 Bill, 7 Wilt, 6 Magic, 5 Steph Curry, 4 Kareem, 3 LeBron, 2 Kobe, 1 MJ.
Thoughts on that, gentlemen?
Surprised Steph's in there.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
surprised
I'm
Steph
surprised
is.
Steph's in there too.
I think they, in an era of ball hogging big men, like or not just big men, but like wings. So I'm thinking of like those top 3s: MJ, Kobe, LeBron. You can put Hoodie Mallow in there. You can put all of those guys in there. Steph revolutionized basketball. He was the first. Like, he was just the volume shooter. He was the first player in NBA history to be the unanimous MVP. 2 MVPs in a row. He should have 5 championships, but he only has 3. The Golden State Warriors were better with him than they were with Durant when only one of them was on the court. And he ran one of the best dynasties we've seen since the Bulls. I mean, 5 consecutive finals appearances. Just destroying the competition almost at every turn. Taking on some of the really good teams like the late Spurs, like the Durant and Russell Westbrook Thunder, the CP3 and Harden Rockets, and being the best of those West teams. And Steph had a huge part to play in it. I still think that, like, you can look at Steve Kerr, you can look at Klay Thompson, you can look at Draymond Green and how well they did with it too. Is definitely a team environment. But when we're looking at how they change basketball and where basketball is looking into the future, where it's more analytical, where it's looking at volume shooting, where it's looking at best percentages, it's because of Steph. And I can't say that he hasn't changed basketball. He for a lot of people, for a lot of kids, he's the new face. Kids still look up to LeBron, but new kids look up to Steph, because he gives the idea of you don't have to bully yourself into the paint and score like that. You can be just as good and just as winning with, being quick, being small, agile, and being a really good shooter.
I don't know. I have a little bit of an issue with putting Steph on the list. I think it's too early in his career to put him
I was
on
gonna
the
say,
list.
I think it's too soon. He revolutionized. I agree, basketball completely. Now
He's
you
been
have
in the
kids
league for
going
9
up
years.
for half-
I think it's
Yeah.
still fine. I think it's perfect to put him up there. I can argue with the placement on the list, but I do think he belongs in the top 10.
I would put him at if we did top 15, I'd maybe put him on there, but I don't know about top 10. I really don't, because one thing we just argued about the down streak that Kobe took toward the end of his career and why for me that put Tim Duncan ahead of him, right? That was the whole situation of the argument. We haven't seen that down streak that every NBA player, with the exception of LeBron James, is going to face in their career. We haven't seen that yet. So maybe the year after he retires, we can revisit this list, and then I'm sure all of us will probably put Steph Curry in the top 10. But I don't know. I think it's a little early.
I think he's done enough. I think he's done enough to show that he belongs on the top 10. And I think that even if the Warriors don't do anything and he retires in the next 3 or 4 years, I still think he's worthy of being put on the list. Because we're talking about best players, and I think that he is one of the best players that has ever stepped on an NBA court. I think that he's revolutionized the game. And I think that when we're looking 10, 15 years down the road and we're going to try to find a reason why the NBA looks the way it does, it's going to be because of the Golden State Warriors and because of Steph Curry.
I don't think the pick is crazy because, like you said, he definitely revolutionized the game and everything. So I think I have to wait for one more thing, and that is if he can get another championship out of this team that he has right now. If he can do that just the way that the Warriors are looking right now and win another ring, then yeah, I can put him in the top 10 for sure.
They won 73-9 without Kevin. They didn't win the championship.
Finals.
They did lose in the finals. And you
The
know
bullshit
what?
stuff.
They almost lost in the Western Conference Finals too.
They
They went
did,
to
had
7
to
with the
come back
Thunder.
3-1.
Yeah, but what I am saying is that they did go 73-9 without Kevin Durant, and then won 2 more
First loss was to
championships.
Giannis and the Bucks, though.
We'll see. We'll see. I mean, but no, and I'll say in 10 years down the road,
thing,
10 years down the road, we're going to have Giannis on this list. We're going to have a bunch of other players on this list that
I don't know if Giannis goes on the list if he never wins a championship.
If he doesn't win the championship, no, he's not going on there. I'm still surprised nobody had AI on the list.
Nope, never.
I
won a
don't think
championship.
AI should be.
Nah. Top 25, but
Top 25,
not 10.
yeah.
Yeah, not 10.
It's and there were a couple of people on the list. Obviously, had we gone to top 15, to me, Kobe
J.R. Smith.
was 11. Kobe to me was 11, and that's where I could have flipped him in. There was a rationalization for it. I understand this is an opinionated list, but then it's there's also guys on the list AI probably would be on toward that list. I think if we're talking about top 15, Kevin Durant probably should be top 15. We could argue
I think Hakeem
Kawhi
could be
Leonard
up there
might
too.
Hakeem could be on there. He was a guy that I struggled with on my list. We could argue Kawhi Leonard could probably be on a top 15 list at this point in his career.
How about
We could all of that kind of
single-handedly
stuff.
winning a championship?
Yeah, literally. I mean, he did it against Steph and that Warriors team because
that was
Clay was hurt. Kevin
that was
was
a
hurt.
hurt Warriors team. If Clay and
Clay
Kevin
was
are
hurt and Kevin was hurt, but hey, who was healthy? Steph Curry.
and they still went 6 games.
And they lost though.
But they still went 6 games. They still went 6
They
games.
lost.
They still
that
went 6
that
games.
was against an inferior Toronto team.
But they still went. Who else on that team? Name one bench player on that team that did well on the Golden State Warriors.
Well, if we're talking about bench players, I mean, I don't give a fuck.
Like
about bench
any
players.
besides the starting 5.
Oh,
Besides,
so you don't give a fuck about bench players, but you give a fuck about 6-man. Okay.
It's a difference when none of the players on either of those teams won 6th Man of the Year, but Lamar Odom did.
But Brady,
Like,
Brady
6th
what
Man
I'm
of the Year,
saying is that it was literally.
How many times has fucking what's his nuts out in the Clippers won 6th Man of the Year? He's a huge reason
Lou
for their
Williams?
success.
Yeah, and he
Yeah,
has
but
a
how
bunch
many
of shit.
championships do they have?
How many rings does he have?
How many rings is he?
They're also the Clippers.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are also.
I really want the Clippers to win this year. You know what? Just to
Fuck off.
F
Bucks all the
you,
way.
fuck you to the Lakers. Have the Clippers win. Yes, I want it so badly.
All right. Well, we got to wrap this segment up. So, Skyler, you have the choice as to the next segment. So what is the next segment that we are talking about here?
Next segment is top 3 NFL teams that can pull 49ers and go worst to first. So looking at teams worst in their division. So like you can look at the really good divisions. Like you can look at the NFC West where it's like we're all expecting most of those teams to do pretty well again, or some surprise picks. But top 3 teams that you think have the best chance of going from worst to first in their division, and if not even their division, to the Super Bowl.
So the teams that were worst in the West, it was the Cardinals. In the North, it was the Lions. In the East, it was the team formerly known as the Redskins. In the South, it was the Panthers. And then in the AFC in the North, it was the Bengals, Chargers, Dolphins, and Jaguars.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough because we've said some things about those teams that...
Can I say none of them?
Nope.
Can I say none of them?
Nope.
I want to say none of them.
I would say
No, but
It's so bad.
You're gonna have to form an argument because I already have my top 3. Because
I already got my one.
I know one for sure could do it. The other 2 is gonna be rough. But yeah.
I only imagine like any of those teams could do it if all the other teams got COVID.
Well, no, we're talking about like dream scenario, like if everything goes their way.
In my dream scenario, none of them win the Super Bowl, and the Packers do.
I mean,
No, he said all they have to do is win their division.
they have to win
None
their
of them
division. They don't have to win the Super Bowl. They have to win their
Packers
division.
all divisions.
They can do it.
I mean, that's true.
Yeah,
There only
it's-
is one team in the NFL.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, and what was it in like the last 2 years? We've had like almost 10 new playoff
Yeah,
teams.
it was like pretty much every single season, about 5 teams that didn't make the playoffs the year before make the playoffs.
So it's not unheard of. Like
You're right. It's not
I personally
unheard
did
of.
not think a 4-12 Niners team would be dominating the way that they did, but they did. They had the roster. It's a very
They
similar
were
roster.
4-12 with a stigma though, because Jimmy Garoppolo hurt himself like I think week 3.
Yeah, tore his
against
ACL.
the Chiefs.
Yeah. So and I mean, I think Jimmy Garoppolo is how that team runs at this moment because you saw it in the Super Bowl. You saw it when
I think that team runs on who's ever the halfback.
Pretty much.
Brady, you're a fucking smartass.
I don't know.
It's true.
I mean, you're right, like technically, but you're a smartass.
No, I mean I'm not saying that as like it runs on whoever the halfback is. I'm saying whoever the halfback is the person who's controlling the entirety of that offense. Because the Niners do not want to throw the ball. Like Kyle Shanahan does not want to throw the ball. That's not.
Well,
his-
okay, but we're looking at like when Jimmy G's been installed into that offense, they were 1-10 when they made the trade with New England, and then they won 5 in a row. Their season would have been a lot better if Jimmy G was in the starting spot last year, but they went 4-12. And I mean, I think Jimmy G is the crux of that offense because without him, that team's horrible. That offense is horrible. That
Put Brandon
offense
Weed
is
in
horrible.
there, you'll get the same results.
But who?
Nope.
Brandon
Nope, I don't
Weeden.
think-
You can put Brandon Weed in there to hand off the ball, and the team will still make the Super Bowl.
Nope. I don't think it's the same.
I would say that at this point in his career, Jimmy Garoppolo maybe runs the risk of being more Ryan Fitzpatrick than he does Tom Brady.
I don't think he's Tom Brady, but we'll get to that when we
no.
talk about Sam.
I can't put faith in the guy. I really can't. But
I can.
all right, so we gotta cut this
That's
segment
a separate
here.
debate.
Yes, it is. So now that we've gotten the arguing out of the way, and I think that we've sufficiently proved that I am the most right of any of the people because it's my show. So fuck everyone else. We have to move on to the Kansas City Chiefs, the reigning Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. And we were supposed to have another guest on the show, our cousin Dusty, who is the only Chiefs fan that I know. Not because there's not a lot of them, just not many in Wisconsin. And I wanted to, I guess I'll pose this to you guys because we've all watched a team that we adore win a championship, but the Chiefs won their first championship in 50 years. So I was going to pose this to Dusty because I genuinely wanted to hear his opinion. But like when we went to the Hall of Fame, Mitch, to watch Jerry Kramer get inducted, we were around a bunch of Eagles fans right after the Eagles won their championship. And I remember asking them, I was like, what does it feel like to watch your team win their first championship or to watch their team win their first championship in a long time? Because
that
I
super
remember
hot girl.
Say that again?
That super hot girl that was behind us, that was an Eagles fan.
Oh, so
Yeah.
I can't talk about it.
That's
so,
unheard of.
I know.
Hi, Krista.
Because it's like I remember watching the Packers win Super Bowl 45. Now, I wasn't alive when the Packers won Super Bowl 31. My dad was like 3-4 when they won the first 2 Super Bowls, and then didn't watch him win another one until he was 36 or something along those lines. So it's like, I guess I'll pose it to everybody here, but as a team who won their first championship in a long time, what does it genuinely feel like to watch your team win their first championship or win their first championship in your lifetime?
I don't know actually, because I got into football like right after the Packers won the Super Bowl, and like during that Super Bowl run, I really don't remember much of it, so I really can't answer this question because since then I haven't seen any of my teams win a championship.
See, my family is huge Packer fans. Like, we bleed green and gold, and so we had watch parties for that Super Bowl, and I remember watching that Super Bowl very vividly. And it's almost like it's where the way I watch games happen now. I start pacing. I don't sit down. I walk, and I'll yell at the TV. I'll yell at whoever. Got up.
I'm not invited over to Mitch's house to watch Packer games anymore because, like, I throw shit. And
I've heard
a
this.
lot.
Yeah, I've heard about that. That's me too. I start swearing, and so I mean, it wasn't the Packers' first Super Bowl, but it was the first championship that I saw where a team won, and it gives you like a sense of like you're better than everybody for about a month, and then you realize you're really not, because you think of the odds of winning it again are just as slim as it was that you thought we were going to win it last year.
Yeah.
Unless you're a Boston Patriots, New
Skyler.
England fan,
Yeah,
whatever.
Skyler's not a part of this segment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Boston's won more championships than anybody fucking cares to
Right.
talk
I
about.
do.
So
I do have.
we're gonna
I do
mute
have
him
something.
for this point. Sure.
No, please don't.
Okay, go ahead,
Please don't.
Skyler.
No, but I like to like the comeback aspect of it, and that like the kind of almost giving up hope. I think I can speak to, because like the Atlanta, we were down 28-3, and like the idea of like you just can't like it's like there's no possible way, and your team made it this far, and like we're supposed to be a really good team, like you're one of the 2 best teams in the country, you should be able to do that. And I mean, just that I went downstairs, I was done with the game, and then I came back up and Mayo had his strip sack, and it was just from there I couldn't stop watching. But like I think the Seahawks one is another good example where it's like New England hadn't won one since 2003, and people were talking about whether or not Brady and Belichick were actually this good, whether or not that they could actually do it, or was it just all of those former players that you had in the early 2000s that made it special? Because we didn't do it in 2007, we didn't do it in 2011. Fucking Giants. And when Jermaine Kearse was that his name, when he caught that fucking catch.
Oh, that bobble on the side of it.
I seriously, I sat there and I was like,
because the next play was the Malcolm Butler interception.
Yeah, I seriously sat there. I sat there and I was like, fuck, another fucking David Tyrese, Mario Manningham thing, and then Pete Carroll called the fucking stupidest play in the fucking world. And I remember crying. I remember like actually like, holy crap, we actually won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And from what I've known from Chiefs fans, it's the same. They treated like the 85 championship with the Bears, like they have it all saved on their TVs.
Yeah.
They've rewatched that game over and over again. Like, as much as I don't like Chiefs fans, I think it's awesome to see them celebrate.
And like I'm in a very similar situation as TJ, because it's like, yeah, the Packers have technically won more world championships than any NFL team. They've gotten 4 Super Bowls, but we've only got to see them watch and or play in one in our entire lifetime. And you could call that a catastrophe to the career of Aaron Rodgers, whatever you want. That's not what we're talking about here. But what we're talking about is, like, I remember sitting in my living room in the pitch dark, watching the Packers have a great lead against the Steelers, and then watch the Steelers slowly chip away at that lead. And it's 4th down on the last drive, and I think it was Tramon Williams got the interception on 4th down to end up winning the game. And just that sense of, man, like, world champions. I get it. 205 other countries don't get to play in the Super Bowl. Only America does. But it was still nice to say champions and to see that. And I felt an immense sense of joy for Chiefs fans when they won. And I especially felt an immense sense of joy for Andy Reid when he won this championship. Because fat guys everywhere deserve to win sometimes. And Andy Reid embodies that more than anybody else. All right. The man celebrated with cheeseburgers after the Super Bowl. And if that's not the most relatable Midwestern thing you've heard of, I don't know what is. So let's talk about the reigning Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. I will be very upfront in saying that I did not expect the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl last season. They were like the third or fourth team on my list, but I had other teams. I thought the Rams were going to do a lot better. I thought the Saints. I didn't have the Niners in there. Neither of these two teams I had as playing in the Super Bowl. The Patriots I thought were going to win the Super Bowl more likely than the Chiefs were. But the Chiefs went 12-4. They lose Patrick Mahomes mid-season in a freak dislocation of his knee injury that goes, well, the Chiefs, he's going to be out for 6 weeks. And he loses that on a Sunday night. He gets hurt on a Sunday night. And they have to turn around and play the Packers. Or he loses that on like a Thursday night. They have to turn around and play the Packers the next Sunday. And there's already talks that he's going to be ready to play the Packers in that game. And I remember going back and forth with Mitch and being like, I hope to God he doesn't play because I want to win that game. Because if Pat Mahomes plays in that game against Green Bay doesn't win that game. Luckily for us, he didn't. But Matt Moore steps in. They lose to the Packers. They come back the next week. They beat the Vikings. Patrick Mahomes ends up showing up after 2 games. They end up losing to the Titans in the regular season. But after that, the Chiefs just rattle off wins. And in the divisional round, in part, thankfully, to the Titans beating the Patriots, the Chiefs ended up having to play Houston. They fall down 24-0, and in 10 minutes in the second quarter, end up at halftime leading 28-24 and destroy the Texans. And then they fall down, I think, 20-10 to Tennessee and end up beating the crap out of the Titans. And then they fall behind to the Niners by 10 points in the Super Bowl, and they end up beating the Niners in the Super Bowl. So this Chiefs team was just so resilient and so good last season, and it was in a way that nobody expected. I think very similar to the way that like the Seahawks won their Super Bowl back in Super Bowl 48, where they tore that Denver team apart in the Super Bowl. Nobody really expected Seattle to play that well. It was a young Russell Wilson, and it was a young Richard Sherman and Earl Thomas and great players on that team. And I think that the Chiefs are built in a similar way to this. But last season, Pat Mahomes throws for 4,031 yards, 26 touchdowns, 5 interceptions in only 14 games. Leading rusher was Damian Williams, 498 yards, 5 rushing touchdowns, 213 yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. Travis Kelce was the team's leading receiver with 97 receptions, 1,229 yards, 5 touchdowns. Next leading receiver was Tyreek Hill, 58 receptions, 860 yards, 7 touchdowns. So as we've ranked the teams before, where do you guys rank the Chiefs? In or in need of a rebuild, in or in need of a reboot, 8-8 playoff tier, or Super Bowl contending team? For me, hands down, Super Bowl contending football team.
Me, hands down, total rebuild. I mean, just blow
Total
this team
rebuild.
up. It's not good enough. Yeah.
Fucking just keep Matt Moore at quarterback. You're fine,
No, but yeah,
obviously.
obviously they're a Super Bowl contending team. Just off the offensive alone, I mean, Patrick Mahomes is definitely the best quarterback in the NFL right now. He's got a plethora of weapons at wide receiver, tight end. They have a good stable of backs. Their offensive line is solid, not great, not bad, but solid. But yeah, I think just off of that, it just makes them hard to beat, and they can contend with any team in the NFL, and they could probably drop 40 on any team and on any defense. So that's why they're the best in the NFL right now, definitely Super Bowl caliber. And it doesn't hurt to have a head coach like Andy Reid.
Yeah, I think as long as Pat Mahomes is taking snaps for this team, they're if not just a playoff caliber, they're a Super Bowl caliber team. Because he is one of the most electric players that we've ever seen since. I mean, Michael Vick, honestly, where it's just like, how the hell is this guy doing these things? So I think that they're definitely a Super Bowl caliber. I think that they're going to be competing for championships in the next couple of years. I am a little worried about their defense, but nothing that I don't think Mahomes can overcome.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest football guru in this call, but just kind of like based like looking at the standings and everything, and like kind of just following the playoffs pretty well this year. Like I feel like the Chiefs are going to, with Brady now out of New England, and now they have to work with Cam and the situation with the Ravens. Are they going to stay as dominant as they were this year? Which I don't think they will. I kind of think the AFC is the Chiefs' playground now. I think the Chiefs are going to run the AFC for a couple more years as long as Mahomes stays healthy. They keep maybe not the same weapons, but give him some caliber weapons like he has now with Hill and Travis and all of them. So I think the Chiefs are going to dominate, especially if they get some more defensive, more defensive players to help them along there, because their defense was the worst part, especially when they were playing the Texans in that first half. Their defense looked like crap, and so did their offense. But it was the offense ended up saving them, not more so defense, more so the Texans just being a joke of a team. Sorry, my roommate, he's a huge Texans fan. But I think the Chiefs are the dominant team in the AFC for the next 4 or 5 years, I'd say.
Like, I agree 100%. My caveat is that, like, because we've experienced this as Packer fans, the Chiefs could either build the next Patriots dynasty or they could be the next Green Bay Packers, where they're consistently in the playoffs, but they don't get the chance to win another championship. Because, like, it's almost eerie to look at. A team with great weapons and a great young quarterback, the way the Packers were in Super Bowl 45, and a serviceable defense, not a ton of studs, but a serviceable defense that won a championship, and you expect to get there again and again and again, and then they don't get the chance. And while I'm not saying that's going to be the trajectory of Patrick Mahomes' career, it's difficult for me not to see a lot of the similarities that's there. Because the year the Packers beat the Steelers in the Super Bowl, the Steelers were the number one defense in the NFL. 49ers were the number one defense this year. Both Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers were at younger points in the career. Aaron Rodgers, that was his third full season as a starter. This is Patrick Mahomes' second full season as a starter, I believe. No, not a huge run game, but great in the pass, similar for both situations. Pretty good pass defense, okay rush defense, similar in both situations. And then it's interesting because then we see this mobile quarterback from another division in conference who starts to play really well. And you wonder how that's going to work. And it's like, holy shit, that was Kaepernick with the Niners. And then when it wasn't Kaepernick with the Niners, it was Wilson with the Seahawks. So the conference is there for the Chiefs to dominate, but are we ever going to see pure domination in the NFL like we did with the Patriots, or is Patrick Mahomes' career going to follow more along the lines of Aaron Rodgers? Because I think his career runs the risk of being more Aaron Rodgers than it does Tom Brady.
I think one thing that allowed Tom Brady, the Patriots, to be and Belichick to be as dominant as it was the division they were in, because it was
dog shit.
Because the Jets, the Bills, the Dolphins couldn't do anything when they had plenty of time. So you had roster turnover, you had your offensive coordinator leaving, you had doubts about what was going to be happening. Our defenses were kind of shit sometimes there. Offensive lines that weren't performing the way that they should have been, and the Patriots were still making the playoffs, still making the Super Bowl, still dominating the AFC East. I think that the AFC West is different than that. I think we're looking how the Broncos are building up their team. I like some of the things what the Raiders are doing. I think even the Chargers, they're looking ahead to how do we beat the Chiefs, because they're not just the Chiefs. How do we match their speed? Because that's what the Chiefs have, speed at almost every position. So I think that is honestly just, I think that leaves and also with the Packers, it was kind of like you had that's right after the Packers did well, then you had the Vikings being like, okay, we need to beat the Packers. Nobody else, just the Packers. You had the Bears going.
I could argue that the Broncos are building in a similar way to how the Vikings built against.
Yeah, and I think that it's just nobody's gonna have an AFC East to go up against, because unless you're in the AFC South and you're able to pull away. Other than that, I don't think the AFC nobody's gonna have just 3 other dog shit teams to just beat on, because I can tell you the AFC West isn't dog shit, except for one team.
So let's move on here to their free agent losses. Kansas City did not have a large free agency in both losses as well as pickups. Now, there's some guys on the list like Terrell Suggs and Matt Moore who they haven't re-signed, who were solid contribution players. But in terms of players who signed with other teams, Kendall Fuller, who was ironically part of the Washington Alex Smith trade that sent Alex Smith to Washington to open the door for Pat Mahomes. Kendall Fuller was traded to Kansas City. Well, he just went back to Washington. He had, in 11 games, he had 49 tackles, 2 passes defensed, and a sack. Emmanuel Ogbah, defensive end, went to Miami. He, in 10 games, had 3 passes defensed, 5.5 sacks, 32 tackles, and a forced fumble. He only played about 40% of snaps. And then one of their backup tackles, Cameron Irving, who played in 69 of 80 games in his career, went to Dallas. Free agent pickups, I like this because they addressed pretty much all those positions. They picked up Mike Remmers from the Giants, who in 14 games played 3 different positions, left tackle, right guard. He was responsible for 81% of snaps for the Giants. They pick up tight end Ricky Seals-Jones from Cleveland, who had 229 yards on 14 receptions and 4 touchdowns. And they pick up Taco Charlton, former first-round pick, absolute bust from Miami, who in 10 games had 5 sacks, 21 tackles, and 2 forced fumbles. So how do you guys grade their offseason?
Obviously, they lost a lot of players in free agency. I think their biggest loss has to be Kendall Fuller. He was their best corner, and with him gone, and they also lost Breeland, I think. They're at corner, they're looking pretty desperate, and that could really hurt them this year. And then when it comes to gangs, I really like the Ricky Seals-Jones pick. I think towards the end of his tenure in Arizona, I think he was starting to do some good things and become a solid player. And putting him with Kelsey, I think they could be a nice tandem that I don't think the Chiefs have really had.
Yeah.
I mean, they've had some all right backup tight ends, but nobody, I think, close to what Ricky Seals-Jones could do. So I really think that could just make their offense even better. But as an overall, I would say maybe a C+.
Yeah. I think even though LaShawn McCoy didn't even barely play a quarter of the snaps, I think he still had some pretty good runs and he gave Patrick Mahomes another weapon in the backfield, which he didn't really have since losing Kareem Hunt, and gave him some kind of that shiftiness. And Andy Reid absolutely loved LaShawn McCoy. And I think losing him is a little rough. I have to agree with Kendall Fuller. I think that their secondary is looking a little scary now, scary bad, not scary good. I thought they lost Chris Jones, but then I double checked and they didn't. So if they had lost Chris Jones,
but he's threatening to hold out if he doesn't get a new contract extension.
That could be big.
And we also have to talk about the fact that the Chiefs at one point had less money in cap space at $800 than money that was sent out in stimulus checks to people.
Yeah, and what I'll say is that similar to the Packers, there's going to be some guys that need some big paydays coming up here soon, that are going to be wanting big paydays. And if they can't give those big paydays, then all of a sudden this team goes down. Because you know what? Patrick Mahomes, he's good. That man.
If I remember correctly, because he sat his first season except for the final game, and then he started 2 seasons. So he's got one more full season on his contract, and then he's got a
fifth-year option.
He's got a team option on there. But realistically, they're going to want to re-sign him before that team option shows
Exactly, and that's going to be a lot of money.
And that's why I talked about when we talked about the Denver episode. I said Denver can be really competitive because once they re-sign Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City doesn't have the cap space to keep a lot of those guys.
And this brings up another part of why New England was so successful. Tom Brady was willing to take pay cuts when he should have been one of the top paid quarterbacks in the NFL. He took pay cuts year after year to keep good players on the roster. Not a lot of quarterback. I think that the way that Patrick Mahomes presents himself and how he looks to the fans, I think that he has that mentality. But I don't know if he can if that's what's going to happen because there will be teams that are going to be willing to pay him a shit ton of money to go play for them. And that's something you got to weigh. So I do think that you got some. I agree that they picked up some good players. I think that some serviceable players, not great players. But I have to give it a C because there's some scary things in their future that I don't think they really addressed.
All right, so moving on to the Kansas City draft here in 2020, they only had 6 picks within the draft as part of various trades and everything. With the their first round pick number 32, they draft Clyde Edwards-Helaire, running back at LSU. He had just over 1,400 rushing yards, 16 rushing touchdowns, 453 receiving yards, and a touchdown for LSU. And their second round pick, overall 63, they drafted Willie Gay, linebacker out of Mississippi State, who only played in 5 games last year, but had 28 tackles, an interception, 2 fumble recoveries, and a forced fumble. Third round, 96th overall pick, they go Lucas Niang, offensive tackle out of TCU. He sits at 6'6", 315 pounds. He's a chunker of a boy. Fourth round, pick number 138, they go L'Jarius Stewart, defensive back out of Louisiana Tech. 73 tackles, 3 interceptions, 6 passes defensed, 3 defensive touchdowns in his career at Louisiana Tech. Fifth round pick, 177, they go Mike Dana, defensive end out of Michigan, 38 tackles, 3 sacks, and 1 forced fumble. I apologize. And in their 7th-round pick, number 237, they go Thacarius Keys, corner out of Tulane, 47 tackles, 1 interception, 4 passes defense. How do you guys grade the Kansas City Chiefs draft?
Man, I got to give it a C. Obviously, the top player out of this draft is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. If he's able to produce like he did at LSU, I think that kind of skill set will just take this offense on a whole another level, if that's even possible. I really think he's going to be a star player at the running back position in that offense. And then Willie Gay and Young, I think, have potential, but there's some question marks. Gay, with the off-the-field stuff, he got into some trouble, so can he keep on the straight and narrow? And then with Lucas Niang, he's got the potential to be a really good offensive tackle and could potentially be a steal, but it's all depends on his development. And I think that's the only thing keeping this grade up as high as I have it.
I'm actually going to go with a B here because I look at those first 3 picks and I think they're good picks. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, if you watch the Alabama game, that guy was part of the reason why they won that game. As much as what Joe Burrow did on that field, Edwards-Helaire, he was catching the ball out of the backfield. He was running it through that really good Bama defense. Not the best Bama defense we've ever seen, but still. Willie Gay. You talk 5 games, and he had the numbers he did. 28 tackles, an interception, 2 forced fumbles, and a fumble recovery. Like, that's insane.
He also took that interception for a touchdown, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Like, that's insane in 5 games. Like, if he played an entire 12-game season, that would have been nice to see. I think that he's more of a depth player right now, but could be a starter within the season just because of sheer talent. And get some of the system things down, and like Mitch said, work on that attitude a little bit. And Young, I think that he has the tools of being a pretty good offensive lineman. I think that he's got some versatility, which would help. But I think that he's probably not going to start this first year. I think he still needs to learn some things, still get some technique down. And then I'll always pick out the late round defensive back because Lamar Jackson for Nebraska was still available at that point. And if he had gone to the Chiefs, I wouldn't have to root for the fucking Jets.
Lamar Jackson from Nebraska was still available. Come on, Skylar, come on.
Wait, the one player that I point out that you guys always, where's this guy from? Oh, he's from Kenosha. Oh, where's this guy from? Oh, he went
that up because there's no one from Wisconsin in those drafts.
Okay, but how many other fucking episodes have you?
I can't help
Schobert, he went to Wisconsin.
Hey, I just point where they're from. I don't say he should have been drafted over these people. I just say, hey, he's from here, and then
Lamar Jackson was a good defensive back. In fact, that he went undrafted was a shame. But no, I think that the upside of those top 3, looks like this could be a really good draft. I think that also the fact that they only had 6 picks kind of just skews the grade a little bit down to where it's like.
Sure. So I'm actually going to give it the second ever A-plus draft, and a large reason of it is because Kansas City doesn't have any glaring needs. In the secondary, yeah, they lost some guys, but there's also still guys like Morris Claiborne and
he's gone.
Sorry. Yeah, I didn't mean Morris Claiborne. I meant Tyrann Mathieu is who I meant to say. Is still there, and he's a solid player. But here's what I like about Kansas City. Kansas City lost a corner in free agency. They drafted 2 defensive backs. Kansas City lost a tackle in free agency. They not only signed a tackle then in free agency, but they drafted another. Kansas City lost a pass rusher in free agency, so they bring in another one. And also Willie Gay, who they brought in his last full season at Mississippi State, he had 48 tackles, 5 sacks, 2 interceptions, and a pass defensed. So his stats are there, and that's solid SEC football. So they bring in a guy who can play interior linebacker as well as he can pass rush. And then at the halfback position, halfback was the only question Kansas City had. Could Kansas City run the ball effectively? Their leading rusher had less than 500 yards as the whole season. If you combine Damian Williams with LaShawn McCoy, they didn't even put up 1,000 yards the entire season. So if Kansas City can then get a run game, and even if they don't use Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the run game, they use him in the pass game predominantly, it just adds a whole nother weapon, who, by the way, they now have on 5-year contract because he was a first-round pick, which is massive. I give it an A+ because Kansas City as a team has built themselves well enough that they don't have glaring needs. The way that, San Francisco had needs, partially on the defensive line after they traded DeForest Buckner, where Green Bay had needs in the wide receiver that we all agree that they completely ignored. Where New England had, everybody agreed that New England had needs at the quarterback position. They didn't draft a quarterback. Sure, they signed Cam Newton months later, but Kansas City doesn't have any massive glaring needs. Like we talk about how the rest of the AFC West is dog shit with the exception of Denver, and Denver's built themselves a team that could go toe to toe with Kansas City. But Kansas City's defensive backs, like their defense only needs to be serviceable enough because their offense is so dominant that their offense isn't going to give up points and the offense isn't going to be stopped a lot. So I give it an A+ in large part because of the team Kansas City's already drafted or already created, but as well as because of some of these guys. Like, I think Zacharias Keys is really underrated, 47 tackles, an interception, 4 passes defensed. I actually love the L'Jarius Sneed pick out of Louisiana Tech, 73 tackles as a corner, 3 interceptions last season, 6 passes defensed, and he's had 3 defensive touchdowns in his career, which is ridiculous. Like we talk about how good a guy like Desmond King was from Iowa who had a similar situation. And L'Jarius Sneed's statistics stand up pretty okay next to him. And then Lucas Niang, I like the pick because he's from TCU, which is an air raid offense. And at this point, Kansas City is running pretty close to an air raid offense. And so depth is depth is depth, and their offensive line is still solid. So I'm going to give them the other A+ pick that I have in this total draft. And y'all can suck it.
No,
It's
I think that
who's right.
I think that the potential is for A+, but I don't think that they've reached it yet. I think that these are players that you're gonna have to see and wait.
Yeah, of course they haven't reached it. They haven't played any football yet, Skyler.
Well, but I'm still saying it's like I go off of where they're at right now. I don't go off of whether they could be or what could develop. I think that it's like looking at it right now, it's a B. But I still think that it's a good draft. I don't think that it's the worst. It's definitely not the worst draft. It's those later. Or I mean, like Jacksonville's last week was not a good draft. But still, I think it's a good serviceable draft for a team that's in Super Bowl contention.
See, my thing is like unlike a lot of the other teams, there's no pick on this draft that I hate. Like, there's no pick that I look at. I'm like, what the fuck are they doing right there? Like, who the what? But like when you break down the film and you look at a lot of those guys, like I remember doing draft analysis on a lot of players, not on all these players, but on a lot of teams and stuff, because frankly, sports was canceled and there was fucking nothing else to do in the world. So I watched more draft analysis on teams like TCU and on the Tulsas and on the Louisiana Techs of the world than I did, and a lot of other stuff. But let's move on to our season predictions here before we get to the Putts of the Week segment. So we've talked about the Chiefs a couple times. We talked about them with Houston and with Baltimore and with Buffalo and with a bunch of other teams like that. So go back, listen to those, especially with the Denver one. This is our second AFC West team that we're covering. And then we have, I think, the other 2 AFC West teams on the next 2 segments, actually. Because next is the Raiders, and then after that is the Chargers. So, we're going to finish the AFC West here within the next 2 episodes. But to kick the season off, they host the Houston Texans. This is a big, fat W for the Chiefs. Houston looks like absolute trash. Defensively, they look bad. Offensively, huge questions on the offensive line. Huge questions in the secondary defensively. This is a big win for Kansas City. I mean, unless Houston comes out and just balls out in a way that we weren't expecting, I think Deshaun Watson's going to have a good game, but there's no way Houston wins this game to me.
Oh, yeah. Chiefs are going to win. It's going to be a bloodbath. I wouldn't be surprised if they just ignored Tyreek Hill because they don't have anybody in the secondary to cover him, so you might as well allot it to other players that they have to cover. But, yeah, just with the weapons that they have on offense, I don't think the defense can handle that, and that's why it's going to be a blowout.
We talked about it in Houston. Their defense is shite, and Kansas City has one of the best offenses in the league, if not the best offense in the league. So it's easy for them to win. It's easy for them to just destroy this team.
I just think based off of the Texans just seemed really off in that playoff game, like chemistry wise, not between players, but more of players and staff. I think between, what's his name, Schaub or something like that, the head coach of the Texans. O'Brien, that's what it is. There's just so much disconnect between him and his coaching staff, and especially with the defensive coordinator, I forgot his name, but I can picture him right now with his glasses hanging down to here.
He was the former Kansas City head coach.
No?
Yeah. I could just tell that there's something off, and going up against a Chiefs team who, just hearing off of the draft picks and how much momentum they'll probably have coming in from the Super Bowl, it's just going to be a blowout. I think it's going to be one of the non-closest games that we're going to see to start.
Yeah, I believe it's been like I think 10 years or something since the reigning Super Bowl champ has actually lost the home opener or like their opening game the next season. Because this is how the NFL works. We're like, typically speaking, they'll kick the season off with the Super Bowl champs playing somebody. For a long time, it was the Super Bowl champs then like doing a rematch in the Super Bowl is how it seemed to work out for a couple of seasons, but against another good team. And I get like why they scheduled Houston here, because like when they had this schedule set up, Houston hadn't traded DeAndre Hopkins yet. But it's like, don't you think this should be flexed for maybe some other game? Like, why not have them play Baltimore week 1? Like, how cool would it have been Kansas City, Baltimore week 1? Would have been awesome. But
On week 3.
yeah, they come in at week 3. So then week 2, they go to Los Angeles to play the Chargers. This is a big win. Again, Pat Mahomes just knows how to tear the Chargers a brand new rear end. And I think he's going to do it again. The Chargers are coming in defensively pretty healthy. But offensively, there's massive question marks. Kansas City wins this game, no question.
Yeah, I think the Chiefs are going to win this game pretty easily. Even though the Chargers do have a defense that I do think can go toe-to-toe with this offense, that quarterback position, either it's Tyrod Taylor or Justin Herbert, I just don't think they're good enough at this point in the season to beat a Kansas City Chiefs team. So that's why the Chargers lose and the Chiefs win.
Yeah, looking at the Chargers team, it's like the roster's there, but the quarterback position isn't.
And the offensive line still has big issues.
And the offensive line is shite.
It's better.
It's better
because
but
of the
it's
trade they
still
made with Carolina, but it's not great.
still
And they have a lot of
shite.
Iowa.
Yeah, but again, it's just like seeing what Pat Mahomes has done to some of these good Chargers teams in the past. I'm excited to see what he does to this team. I have to give it to Kansas City.
I almost kind of think that like we could see, before we get to TJ here, I almost think we could see like Kansas City put up the points that Miami gave up in the first 3 weeks like last season, where Kansas City is like their first 3 games are like 49, 45, and then even like with their next game against Baltimore, it could be like they put up like 42 or some shit like that, because this offense just looks dominant.
It does.
Yeah, I think the Chiefs are just going to dominate this game too. The Chargers have really good weapons on offense other than the quarterback spot, which I think that's going to be their biggest downfall for the first half of the season. I think they're going to kick in at the end of the year. I think they're going to be a pretty average team once it comes to the end. They'll start winning games, but the open up your second week against the Chiefs when you're still trying to figure out who's going to be at the head of your offense, I don't think Chargers have a chance.
Alrighty, so then week 3, a matchup that I'm so excited for to watch, because their game, I think in week 3 as well, last season was one of the best ones I've ever watched. Won a great football game. Kansas City now goes to Baltimore to play the Ravens. I have Kansas City winning this game just because even though the Ravens have improved themselves defensively, I think that Kansas City is a little bit of a better team. And while I absolutely think this is going to be a shootout, like this is going to be a 38-35 or a 42-38 or a 45-42, whatever your ball game it's going to be. It's just I like Kansas City a little bit more. I like what Pat Mahomes can do with his arm a little bit more than what Lamar Jackson can do with his arm. And while Pat Mahomes isn't going to run for 100 yards like Lamar Jackson is, Pat Mahomes can run just as well as most other quarterbacks can in the NFL. So I'm going to give my nod to Kansas City here and say that the Chiefs get a big win against Baltimore.
I got to give the Chiefs their first loss. I think both these teams have really explosive, dynamic offenses. But when it comes down to the other side of the ball, I don't have faith in the Chiefs' defense holding Lamar Jackson, but I can see the Ravens' defense holding Patrick Mahomes. They just have a really good offense. They have a really good defense, and I just think they're a more complete team compared to Kansas City, where it's basically if their offense isn't being the way that they're doing, then they're going to lose because their defense can't win them games. So that's why Baltimore beats them.
This is a game that needs to be won at 3 levels. Like, you have to win at every single level: offense, defense, and special teams. And in this case, I have to give Baltimore the edge on those last two. I think Baltimore has a better special teams unit. I mean, they have the best kicker in the NFL. They have a really good punter who's been there for a long time and continued to have success. I think their defense is better. I think that they made strides to make sure their defense was better, getting Calais Campbell, getting a Patrick Queen in the draft. I think that, you know what, like, I have to give it to Baltimore. I think that it's a close game. It's going to be a shootout, but when it comes down to defenses, I have to give the edge to Baltimore over Kansas City.
I agree. I think Baltimore is going to win this by like the smallest margin, just because I think that Baltimore's defense could slow down Patrick's abilities just enough to where it's not gonna, like, they're not gonna offset. I don't think Kansas City can stop Lamar's flexibility to just keep the play going and keep the offense moving on the field. I think, though, Baltimore has a bit better of an opportunity to stop Patrick just enough to give Lamar those 1 or 2 opportunities he needs to keep him ahead.
All right. Well, when I'm right and all of you guys are wrong, I will formally accept apologies. But that's fine. It's fine. You know what?
You're either revolutionary or fucking stupid, bud.
I choose to think it's revolutionary. You know, it's fine. It is what it is. You guys can go suck or fuck. But anyway, week 4, they then host the New England Patriots in a rematch of the AFC Championship game from a couple seasons ago. This finally turns out the way that Kansas City wanted it to turn out in the AFC Championship game a couple years ago. I have Kansas City beating New England. I think New England's defense they're probably the best defense in the NFL if we're talking all around. I would actually take the New England defense over San Francisco. And a large part of that is just because Bill Belichick's the greatest, probably defensive-minded head coach that the NFL's ever known, as well as maybe one of the greatest offensive-minded head coaches the NFL's ever known. But even with that, I think Kansas City's just too rough on New England. And unfortunately, we've seen Kansas City with both Pat Mahomes and Alex Smith beat up on New England a couple times in the regular season. So I'm going to give my nod to Kansas City here and say that the Chiefs start out 4-0.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Chiefs are going to beat the Patriots. Even with the addition of Cam Newton, I really don't think it's going to make a difference in this game. Because I still have questions about the Patriots offense just when it comes to the weapons, because it's basically Edelman and Marquise Lee and nobody else really. And then the tight end is basically non-existent. So I think that really limits to what they want to do offensively. And yeah, the Patriots do have a really good defense, but I think with some of the key losses that they had, I don't know if they're going to be as dominant as they were last year. But even if they are, I don't think they can keep up with the Chiefs offense, so Chiefs win.
If there's one team in the NFL that could limit the weapons the Kansas City Chiefs have, it's New England. On that, the back half of the secondary for New England is just way too good. But Patrick Mahomes is just a magic person. New England's offense we have no idea what it's going to look like right now. And I just have to give it to Kansas City. As much as it pains me, I have to give it to Kansas City because I think that as of right now, we don't know what the offense of New England's going to look like. Kansas City's the better team.
I agree. I think just the question of, is Cam going to fit in Bill Belichick's, the way he runs things, and is he going to be able? Is the pressure going to get to him when a big game like this? Is he going to live up to the old expectations of, what would Tom Brady do in this situation, or, can he bring this team against such good competition? I think Cam's going to have a good game, but I don't think he's going to be able to keep up with Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
Just because of the questions there is with the offense.
Yeah, and if Cam Newton maybe had a full off season, I could maybe tip my hat slightly more toward New England, but with a weird off season that we're already going to have, I think Kansas City's the clear favorite here.
I think it's a closer game than people are going to expect, though.
I agree,
because of New England's defense.
I think New England's defense is going to keep it competitive, but
I don't think it's going to be as high scoring either.
No, I think it'll probably be like a 28-24 ball game.
Yeah.
It'll probably come down to whatever team kicks the first field goal loses, because the other team will score a touchdown type game.
Mm-hmm.
So then week 5, they host the Las Vegas Raiders. I actually have them losing this game. I have them losing it because I think the AFC West, I think the Raiders are going to be a better team, and the Raiders have played the Chiefs rather competitively. They walked into Kansas City last season and they put up a big dud against them. But in that week 1 matchup, or in the earlier matchup they had last season, the Raiders gave up 21 points in the third quarter or in the second quarter and didn't give up any more points the rest of the game. Unfortunately, the offense didn't develop. I think that this time the offense is going to develop a little bit more. I like the free agent moves that the Raiders made, and we'll get to it on the next episode here. I think Max Crosby is a great player. I think he's going to have a great game. I like the pickup of Nick Kwiatkowski, which we've talked about a couple of times. I think offensively they found their groove a little bit more towards the end of the season. So a large reason, part of it is because of it's an AFC West matchup, and I don't know if the Chiefs are going to be as dominant in the division. So I'm just going to go out on a fluke here and say that the Raiders end up winning that game.
I have the Chiefs winning this. I have no faith in the Raiders defense. I've said that consistently throughout this podcast. And then with their offense, I've said I just feel like it's really one-dimensional. It's basically Josh Jacobs and Darren Waller. And even though the Raiders defense did improve a little bit, it's still not good enough to contend with Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Sammy Watkins, and now Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So
just continue. Let Mitch talk.
I would just like to throw up that we haven't seen what Jonathan Abram is going to look like against the Chiefs because he got hurt week 1. So I
know I like Abram too, but I don't think he's gonna turn this defense into top 10, top 5. So Skylar, what's your pick?
Oh, I have to go with Kansas City here. As much as I do like a lot of what Las Vegas has been doing, because I think that they've improved almost at every facet. I think that the team last year was really young, and I think that led to some questionable mistakes and questionable losses. I think that I agree with Brady. I think that their defense is going to look better. I think though with Kwiatkowski, with Abrams, with Crosby, that defense is going to start looking really good. I don't think it's enough though, at least this week.
I want to pick the Raiders so bad. I want them to do well. If after all they've had, after all they've been through, I want them to do good. But every time I say the Raiders are going to do good, they don't do good. They always, I don't know if I'm their kryptonite when I say they're going to do good, but they always let me down. So I'm going to let the Chiefs have this one.
I do think if the Raiders were in any other division, they'd be playing a lot better.
Yeah. Okay. I would probably agree with that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then week 6 matchup, they go to Buffalo to play the Bills. Even though I think the Bills defense is absolutely fantastic, there's massive questions with Josh Allen there. The only quarterback to start 27 games and never have more than 270 passing yards. Josh Allen was thought to have as good, if not better, a cannon than Pat Mahomes has, but we've never seen Josh Allen actually use it. And now maybe with Stephon Diggs, this Bills team is going to be better. I don't necessarily believe it, so I'm going to give my win to Kansas City here against Buffalo.
Yeah, I think the Chiefs are going to win. Even though the Bills do have a really good defense that could really contend with this team, I have to go with you, Brady. I just don't know what Josh Allen is going to do this season. I mean, if he did take a step or two in this offense and just came that much better and was more accurate, I could maybe see them pulling an upset here. But with not knowing that knowledge yet, I have to give it the Chiefs just because, the Chiefs.
I've said it before. I think momentum is everything in football, and I think that if you get a quarterback confident enough that they can really do anything. So before this, I have
more than 270 yards, but that's just true.
Let's see. Before this, I have Buffalo winning 5 straight. Make that 6 straight. I think that Buffalo, with their defense, does just enough for Josh Allen to find Stephon Diggs in the corner of the end zone for a game-winning touchdown. I'm a New England fan. This pains me to say this, that they win 6 straight and beat Kansas City.
Are you sure you're just not a Bill fan now?
Oh, God, no. Oh, God, no. Oh, that pain.
Yes,
I'm burning. That hurts. I do think that Buffalo has the tools to beat this team, and I think that they can at home if they have a pretty light first half of their schedule. It looks pretty easy. So I think Buffalo comes in with some confidence. I think that Kansas City, having just like played some really close games last couple of weeks, and winning those games, gets a little overconfident. And I honestly think that this could be a trap game for Kansas City. and that Buffalo can win it.
I'm so happy I'm not alone in choosing the Bills here.
You asshole.
Bills Mafia. I don't know. I like the way the Bills looked at the end of the year last year, even though they didn't have. It didn't look like the pieces were fully together come to the playoff time, but I don't know. There's something about the Bills that I find interesting. They're one of the teams. I don't follow many teams outside the Packers in the NFL, but the Bills to me have always been an interesting team, and I think this year they're going to put some pieces together and surprise some people. And I have them beating the Chiefs here.
All right, whatever. Rich and I will be correct. We started the show, and it's just a courtesy that you guys can be a part of it. Okay, and this is how you repay us. I can't necessarily judge because I literally had them losing to the Raiders the week before, so I can't necessarily judge.
Both have a better defense.
So then week 7 matchup, they go to Denver to play the Broncos. This was my astonishing pick when I went with Denver when we did the Denver episode. I had Denver winning this game. I think we talked about some of the issues that the Kansas City secondary has there. I think Denver might be able to take credit with that. I think they might be able to kind of use that against Kansas City. I think this is going to be another shootout. I think Kansas City is going to find themselves in a couple of shootouts, especially earlier here in the season. This ends up being one of them. But I have Denver winning this game. I like what Denver's bringing to the table. The Jarrell Casey pick up was absolutely massive. I think their linebacker core is a little bit underrated. I like the secondary. Justin Simmons is a great defensive back, and AJ Boye is a big pickup as well at the corner position. I like what Denver's bringing to the table here, so I'm going to give Denver the nod against Kansas City.
Yeah, I'm on the same page with you. I think Broncos are going to get the upset here. I just really like their defense. I think it's going to be good and can stall the Chiefs. And I think if Drew Lock progresses and the offense progresses the way that we think, I think they can totally take advantage of the Chiefs' lackluster defense, and that'll be the key for them to win.
Brady, correct me or if I'm wrong. I gave this to Kansas City.
You did.
First time. I did? Okay,
You did
so
give it
yeah.
to Kansas City.
Okay, well, I'm going to continue to give it to Kansas City because I just want to make sure I'm being consistent here because I can see it going either.
Appreciate that's about you.
I is that what you appreciate about me? But because I can see it going either way, but I do think that Kansas City has weapons to exploit the defense. I do like AJ Boye, but I don't think he does the same things that Chris Harris Jr. can do. I think that the defensive line is not where it used to be, as much as it pains me to say it, because I love that defensive line. I think Bradley Chubb is still a great player, but I think Von Miller lost a step last season, and I don't know if he can go back to what he used to be. I really want him to because he's a dynamic player, very explosive defensive lineman. And Drew Lock, I mean, it's going to be tough because we had a small sample size of the games that he played in last year, and they weren't against the best competition. So I want to see what Drew Lock can do against this Kansas City defense. I don't know if he can win the game, though. So I have to give it to Kansas City.
I don't like the Broncos, so Chiefs. I just don't like the Broncos.
Fair enough.
I don't like the Broncos either. I mean,
Nobody
fuck
likes the
John Elway.
Broncos.
All right, so then week 8 matchup, they host the New York Jets. This is absolutely a win for the Chiefs. The Jets look like absolute poo-poo on a shiny platter, handed by a bald man named Adam Gase. So Kansas City just wins this game. They're a much superior team. This might be the game that if they lose bad enough, Adam Gase may get fired after this football game.
Yeah, Chiefs win. Jets haven't been relevant since Joe Namath.
Since Joe Namath?
I think Mark Sanchez would care to disagree with you before.
Back-to-back AFC Championship games, but then again, butt fumbled all the way out.
Pre-butt fumble, Mark Sanchez would disagree.
And where they are now after those 2 championship appearances.
Nowhere.
Exactly.
No, people know how I feel about the Jets. They lose.
J-E-T.
Go Kansas City.
Jets.
No,
I think they've been just as relevant. I don't know why I have this jersey. It's a Brett Favre Jets jersey.
Traitor.
But that means nothing because the Chiefs are going to kick their ass.
That means nothing.
That's the only time they were relevant, when Brett Favre had his hooray to end his career.
Had that terrible 9-7 season.
Yeah, and then he goes back to the Vikings. And
Best
beats
season
the
they've
Vikings.
had in a while.
All right. So then at the halfway point of the season, we actually all have the Chiefs at 6-2, but none of us have agreed completely on a loss. So like I had them beating Baltimore. You three had them losing to Baltimore. I had them losing to the Raiders. You had them beating the Raiders. And then Skylar and TJ agreed that they would lose to the Bills. Mitch and I disagreed, and Mitch and I said they'd lose to the Broncos, and you guys disagreed. So we haven't agreed on a loss yet. So then week 9, they come out of the bye. They play the Carolina Panthers. This is absolutely a win for Kansas City. Carolina's defense is going to be okay, but the offense has massive question marks. We don't know what Matt Rule's team is going to look like. The Carolina defense is going to need to be plug and play with a lot of stuff like that. Kansas City takes advantage of it and just absolutely destroys the Panthers.
Yeah, the Panthers are really a clusterfuck right now. They're still trying to figure out what their offense is going to be. It's basically just Christian McCaffrey right now, and then defense is a shell of what it was when they played the Super Bowl. And with getting a rookie head coach who's never been in the NFL and a rookie offensive coordinator, Joe Brady, I just think there's a lot holding back the Panthers, and that's why the Chiefs are going to get an easy win.
Joe Brady worked with the Saints before he was.
But he was a way back office offense.
But he was still working with the offense.
He was like an offensive.
He was in the dark
personnel. Like
he was
okay,
in the dark
but
room
still, no, he has
film.
NFL experience.
Barely. More
Okay,
than
fine.
that role.
He stepped inside an
He has
NFL building.
He has more than his head coach does.
He was inside an NFL building. There we
At
go.
one point. I have as much experience as Joe Brady.
I think that Carolina's defense is real young. I said in the last episode that they have a top 5 pick in the draft. So I have so Kansas City wins. Not because Carolina's a bad team, they're just a young team, especially on that defense.
I mean, the only thing I know about Carolina now is Christian McCaffrey, and if that's the only thing I know about your team, you're kind of screwed. So go Chiefs. Even though he's really good. He's really good.
Yeah.
He's kind of unstoppable.
I don't remember what Twitch guy it was, but it was a guy who was like live streaming something, and like Christian McCaffrey was playing. He's like, "That's not a football player. That's a lawyer in a helmet."
Have you seen his brothers? They all look the exact. Like Luke McCaffrey looks like a baby.
Yeah,
He's such a baby.
It's ridiculous, but that whole family is so uber talented. So then Kansas City has a week 10 bye. They come out of the bye. They go to the Raiders. I think they avenged their loss earlier in the season. They beat the Raiders here. The reason that I have them winning this game as opposed to the earlier matchup is because Kansas City has the bye beforehand. I think they used the bye against the Raiders, figure out their mistakes from before. They come out, they beat the Raiders in week 11.
Chiefs win. Same result, new game.
No, Raiders win.
Fucking hell. Fuck off, Skyler. Jesus Christ.
And I think it's because it's at home. I also think that Derek Carr sneakily has been pretty good the last 2 seasons. He threw for 4,000 yards, completed 70% of his passes last season, and had almost 3.5 to 1 touchdown to interception ratio. So the reason that the Raiders were bad last year had nothing to do with Carr. He's got new weapons. His defense got reloaded. I think that they surprise Kansas City wins this game because Kansas City gets caught looking ahead against Tampa Bay.
I was going to pick Oakland until I heard that they had a bye, and they're not going to beat Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes after a bye week. So Chiefs on this one.
Go Raiders.
Yeah, it's like for all those reasons, Skyler, you could have stuck up for me in week 5.
If you want to change it, then if you want to, you can change it.
No, you've already made your decision, you fucking traitor. Okay.
This isn't the Packers after a bye, okay? They're not going to fall apart and be like, oh, okay, let's just go drink beer and
yeah, they're not going to travel to the West Coast and go, oh, we have to play the Niners, and then just fucking show up, okay?
Yeah, you're not going to talk shit and then lose by a million. No, they're going to be fine.
No,
they have a competent coach.
I think the Raiders are a sneaky good team.
Yeah,
and this is where they surprise everybody.
We're family.
A good team to get the first overall pick.
There you go. All right, so then week 12, again, a very interesting matchup. They go to Tampa to play the Buccaneers. I have them winning this game. I think this entire game comes down to offensive line because between this and the matchup that they have to play against the Saints, both of them on the road, I would take the Saints offensive line over the Tampa offensive line. And I think that the Chiefs defense is going to have a little bit more of a field day against Tom Brady than they will against Drew Brees. So between those two games, and I'm looking ahead to the Week 15 matchup against New Orleans, between those two, I think that New Orleans is a better team than Tampa Bay. And I think Kansas City stacks up well against both teams. So I'm going to give them the win against Tampa Bay. I think defensively they're going to do enough to threaten Tom Brady so that even though the wide receiver core is really strong, they're going to have issues. Tampa Bay doesn't have anything resembling a running game right now. And unlike Kansas City, they didn't address that in the draft. And we've gone back and forth on defenses, but I think we can all agree that the Tampa Bay defense is going to have a hard time covering the weapons that Kansas City is going to bring to the table. So I say Kansas City wins that game against Tampa.
Points are always weird. I have Tampa Bay upsetting the Chiefs.
Fuck off.
Tampa Bay. Just because that.
Take it away.
Yeah, I have Tampa Bay winning this game. I just think that with Tom Brady being in this kind of offense where he gets like superstar weapons and then he gets a familiar face in Gronk at the tight end position. Their running back core is a little sketchy. They did address it with Keyshawn Vaughn out of Vanderbilt, so I guess we'll see what he can do. And then their offense is But I think they definitely have enough firepower to compete with the Kansas City Chiefs offense. And I feel like the Tampa Bay defense is a little bit better than what the Chiefs defense is, and I think that's the deciding factor in this game.
I'm going to agree with Brady. I think that when you have to go on the road and play both Tampa Bay and New Orleans, I think Kansas City is good enough to win against one of those teams, and just so happens that the worst of those two teams is Tampa Bay. And I think it's because you're just really plugging in, like, besides, like, you made some good draft picks, you got some okay signings of keeping some players on, you have a pretty good defense, like a good defense, in my opinion, and we can go back and forth against that. But again, Kansas City is Kansas City. One of the best offenses, and their defense just does enough to beat Brady. Because if there's one quarterback that they know how to try to play, it's Brady. So
I'm going to agree with Mitch.
Yeah,
I just think, like, over the course of my lifetime, you never bet against Tom Brady. I don't care what game it is. This is going to be a huge game. This is going to be a primetime game. The only time I've been correct in going against him was last year in the playoffs when he looked awful. I don't think he'll ever look that awful again. And I think in a big game against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs on the road, I think they're going to win. Tampa Bay.
I think it's going to be an interesting game. I think it's going to be a fun game to watch.
It's one of my most anticipated games to watch.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll invite you on for the Tampa episode because I think that's going to be the one where we're going to yell at each other the most because we've had some very differing opinions on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
I was really skeptical against the Bucs when Brady first went there, but I've kind of like warmed up to it. I kind of like it.
See, and I'm the exact opposite because like I was like, oh my god, Tampa Brady or to Buccaneer, whatever, you know. But I was really psyched about it, and then the more I thought about it, I was like, it's like Tom Brady like 5 years ago to Tampa, yeah, okay. But so we'll go back and forth on it continuously. But then week 13, they now host the Denver Broncos. I have this as a win. I don't see Tampa getting swept by Denver. I think Tampa does a really great job.
Tampa, yeah.
Tampa. Sorry. Welcome to the Fourth String Sports Podcast. This is episode 7. I don't think Kansas City gets swept by Denver. I think that Kansas City does a really great job of learning from the mistakes of earlier in the season. And I think a huge case in point is Patrick Mahomes' first game back after his knee injury was against Tennessee, and they didn't look great. And then they come back in the playoffs, and they really fixed a lot of that stuff. And they really shut down Derrick Henry quite a bit in that game. And I think that they take some of that same mentality against Denver. They figure out what worked for them. They use it against the Broncos, and I think they win that game against Denver.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Chiefs are going to beat the Broncos in this one, just for the simple fact that I don't think the Broncos can sweep the Chiefs.
Yeah, sorry, it was my turn. I think Kansas City can sweep the Chiefs, or Kansas City can sweep the Broncos. And they do it because the Broncos, while they're good, they're much more improved. I do think that Kansas City is still a better team. And is that consistent with my last pick, Brady, with Denver?
That's a good question. TJ, what's your pick while I go look at that really quick?
Should I upset you really quick, Brady?
Should I what? Oh yeah, do it.
No, I'm
Piss-
I'm just kidding.
Piss me
No,
off further, TJ.
the Chiefs
Yes,
are going to
Skyler,
win.
it was.
I,
You had Kansas City sweeping the Chiefs.
and I'm with Skylar. I think Kansas City's going to sweep the Broncos. I just never been impressed with the Broncos. I don't like John Elway.
Fair enough, man. Fair enough. So at the 3/4 way of the season, Skyler, Mitch, and TJ all have Kansas City at 9-3. I have them at 10-2. Now, Week 14 matchup, probably the toughest game of the entire season that Kansas City is going to have to play. They have to go to Miami to play the Dolphins. And by toughest matchup, I mean it's just going to be the one in the warmest climate that they probably have to play at. So, with the exception of maybe the Tampa Bay game. Kansas City wins this. The Dolphins have improved defensively in terms of signing players, but we don't know what they're bringing to the field. At this point in the season, is it Ryan Fitzpatrick or Tua Tagovailoa starting a quarterback? In reality, does it matter in this game? They've got Devontae Parker and then not much else in terms of the receiving. Running the ball has questions. Kansas City wins this game.
Yeah, Kansas City wins this game easily. I think it's going to be a blowout. I'm even going to make a bold prediction. I'm going to say that Miami doesn't score a single point.
I think Miami scores a point. Maybe
Nah, bro.
maybe 3, 6, maybe 13 if we're feeling lucky.
Kansas City lets them get a safety. They just feel bad.
No, I think that Patrick Mahomes is on the bench by the beginning of the fourth quarter because they're ahead that much. I think Chad Henne goes under quarterback. Throws for 2 touchdowns and 250 yards in the fourth quarter alone. But no, I think that Miami's making strides. I think that they have a better case of being the next good team in the AFC East instead of the Buffs because I think the Buffs are just gonna fuck it up like they always do. But no, I have to give it to Kansas City. I think Kansas City's just too good.
You know, I like Miami's roster. I like the warm weather in Miami. I like their logo. I like that they put Ace Ventura in one of his movies. They're featured in there, and everything I said is a lie because the Chiefs are going to spank them.
Spank them.
They're going to get destroyed.
You ever spanked a Dolphin before, boy? So Week 15 matchup. Yeah. When have you spanked a Dolphin?
Big dummy thick.
Come on, Skylar. Also, sexualization of Dolphins is wrong.
You like the way that beak squeaks at you, boy?
Oh.
Hey, PETA's going to be after us. Cut it out.
Oh, sorry.
You started it!
I'm scared of PETA.
Come on,
Week
Brady.
15
Let's hear you talk about a dolphin. Come on,
Week
you're the only
15,
one left.
Dolphins are majestic. They
Exactly.
can fight sharks off.
Also-
Dolphins are. I mean, they also like. Well, no, I'm not gonna bring it up. Never mind. We're gonna move on. Week 15 matchup. They go to New Orleans to play the Saints. I have them losing this game. I had a toss up between Tampa or New Orleans. I didn't think they were going to be both teams. So which team did I like more? I like New Orleans on paper a little bit more. I like New Orleans. They're a little bit more settled in terms of like just offensively. They're more settled because we know the groove that New Orleans has. There's questions with Tampa Bay just because we haven't seen them play yet. The other big thing is that New Orleans has a running game. Tampa Bay doesn't. And I think that the New Orleans defense is still pretty good there. So it's going to be a shootout, but I think that Drew Brees pulls out a win against Patrick Mahomes.
Wrong. I think that the Chiefs are going to beat the Saints. Looking at the games last year, especially towards the playoffs, Drew Brees looked super old, and I think he's on the decline.
So why is Drew Brees going to look super old, but you're not going to say Tom Brady's going to look super old 2 weeks before that?
What do you mean?
He does. He picked Kansas City to lose. Sorry, never mind.
Kansas City to lose in that game.
Yeah.
But you're picking Kansas City.
It's because Brady's the GOAT.
Beat Drew Brees.
Yeah,
Tom
Drew
Brady
Brees-
or Brady Russell?
Both.
Yeah, you don't bet against Tom Brady. And Brees look older. Sorry.
Okay.
Even though that, the Saints have a really good offense. They have a stout offensive line. They got some really nice weapons. But I think that Brees is on the decline, and that's going to hold them back from their potential. And I really don't like the Saints' defense. I mean, I feel like it's fool's gold. It always looks really good, but when put into practice, it always lets them down. So with that being said, I think the Chiefs can win this.
If this was San Francisco and they were running the ball, then I'd give it to if they were running the ball and that was like going to be the thing they did, then I would say New Orleans loses. but because we don't know what this run game is going to look like with Kansas City. And similar to the Baltimore game where it's like, this is going to be a game you need to win at 3 levels. I have to give it to New Orleans defense. I have to give it to New Orleans special teams. I think New Orleans is just better all around as a team. They're more settled. They have an identity of what they're going to do. I'm not saying Kansas City doesn't have an identity. It's give the ball to Patrick Mahomes and see what he does. But with a rookie at running back, running against that, I think New Orleans is a good defense. So I have to give it to New Orleans. I agree with Brady. They're not going to go to Tampa Bay and to New Orleans and not come out of that with a loss.
This was, after looking at their schedule, this is the only game where I didn't think twice about the Chiefs losing, just because I feel like this year is probably going to be where the Saints are the most hungry, just because of what's happened with them in the postseason in the past few years, just falling short or, just being right there and then not having enough to reach it. I think this is where Drew Brees, Michael Thomas, all those guys are going to show off what they got right before playoffs start, send a message, and then waltz right into the playoffs. So I think the Saints are going to kind of win handedly too.
Really? I think Michael Thomas is going to have 30 receptions for 120 yards because they're all going to be 4-yard slants, and the Saints are going to win because Michael Thomas only knows how to run a 4-yard slant route. So
he's the best in doing it.
He's the best at doing it. So now, Mitch, you were the only one to pick the Chiefs to win, so you're the odd man out. So nana boo boo. Week 16 matchup, they finally get another home game. They host the Atlanta Falcons. This is a game we talked about in the Atlanta episode. I absolutely have the Chiefs winning this. Atlanta is coming up with 50 feet of crap just as a roster, and the Chiefs absolutely annihilate them.
Yeah, Chiefs are going to win this easily. They're shit at both sides of the ball, and yeah.
Atlanta's my Jets of the NFC. Go Chiefs.
Go Chiefs. I think the Falcons are a joke now.
Thank you, guys. We finally agreed on a full pick. That was like the first one we'd agreed to in a while. Well, with the exception of the Miami episode. So then to close out the season, they host the Los Angeles Chargers. I think that this is no different than their Week 2 matchup. At this point, I don't think the Chargers are playing for anything special. If anything, they're playing to get a higher first-round pick. Chiefs, I think maybe at this point the Chiefs rest their starters. Again, I don't know if teams are going to do that with the extra-seeded playoff and only one team getting a bye. But at this point, because I have the Chiefs winning against Baltimore earlier in the season, they've already locked up that number 1 seed. Even with the backups, I think that the Chiefs still beat the Chargers.
Sorry. Yeah, I think the Chiefs are going to win this. I still don't like what the Chargers have at the quarterback position, and I really think that holds back the potential of this team, and that's why the Chiefs are going to sweep the Chargers.
Chiefs go 5-1 in division.
I think the quarterback question for the Chargers is going to haunt them the whole year, and I don't see them beating the Chiefs at all.
All righty. So at the end of the season, we still did not agree on a single loss for the Chiefs, which is the first time that that's happened. We agreed on a bunch of wins, but not a single loss did we universally say that you're going to lose this game, which I think is a testament to the Chiefs, and it shows just the differing opinions, but that we all agree they're going to be good. So Skylar and TJ both have the Chiefs going 12-4. Mitch and I both have the Chiefs going 13-3. I won't speak for anybody else, but the Chiefs, to me, lock up the number 1 seed. And a huge reason is because of that Week 3 win against Baltimore. With that win against Baltimore, it gives them that tiebreaker because I also have Baltimore going 13-3, and you can go back and listen to the Ravens episode. But that tiebreaker ends up being the difference, and the Chiefs clinch the number 1 seed and home field advantage to the playoffs.
I have the Chiefs at the 2nd seed.
I hate you so much.
Who's better than them?
Baltimore.
I think he had Baltimore.
Yep.
Yeah.
Baltimore going 14-2.
No, Mitch, you also had Baltimore going 13-3.
Yeah, but I have the Ravens beating the Chiefs,
Oh, yeah,
so
that's
that's
right.
why they get the 1
Yeah,
seed.
you do.
Well, I mean, it's similar for me too. I have them in the 2nd seed, and the only reason they're in the 2nd seed is because they lose to Baltimore in Week 3. Because Baltimore also goes 12-4. So I really think it's between those two teams about who gets home field advantage throughout the playoffs.
All right, and then TJ just joined us for this one. He hasn't been a part of the other one, so I don't know if he even has a playoff bracket or anything like that, which is okay. So let's
No, not yet.
That's not yet. That's okay. So let's move on to the putts of the week. Or no, What a Putz. I'm sorry. I yelled at Mitch on the last episode for this. So it's What a Putz is the segment. What a Putz. Now, again, this is a weekly one that we do on every single episode where we talk about a player, an organization, a moment in sports that happened where we were just like, what a dumb thing that you did, or how stupid was that? So my What a Putz, we talked about it, we hinted at it earlier. My What a Putz is the Washington Redskins. The fact that they had to wait for this much pressure to decide to change their team name when this has been called upon for a long time. And the fact that even now there's reports that Dan Snyder is not very open to changing the team name, I think is absolutely ridiculous. My What a Putz goes to the Washington Redskins. I hope that they change the name to something that is actually worthwhile, even if they change it to something dumb. Like, even if they just call themselves the Wildcats or some generic name, anything is better than the Redskins. And the fact that we're in the year 2020 and now they're finally changing that is absolutely ridiculous. So my What a Putz goes to the Washington Redskins.
My What a Putz candidate for today is Cam Newton supporters. And the reason why is their overreaction to Cam Newton's contract. I think they're being really stupid. There's a reason why he's getting the contract he has. It's because, one, he's got health issues. I mean, we're not talking about the Cam Newton who's coming fresh off a Super Bowl loss and MVP win. We're talking about a guy who's been injured for the past few years and coming off a serious injury, and in a season where COVID's happening, so you can't get a medical on him, so you don't know what the health status is. I think that plays a huge role into why he's getting only up to $7.25 million. And plus, the Patriots don't have that much cash on them right now, so even if they wanted to pay him the money that people think he needs, they wouldn't be able to do it. And if they did try to do it, they would have to make the roster worse just to pay him. So I think it's really stupid for people to attack why he's getting paid, because he doesn't have a problem with it. Have you once heard Cam Newton bitch about the money he's getting? No. So I think Cam Newton supporters are being really stupid and acting like real putzes. And I did have an honorable mention with Brady picking the Kobe pick.
With you fucking twat.
My What a Putz goes to the Los Angeles Lakers because they signed J.R. Smith after Brady predicted that they would. Because, yeah, fucking putzes. It's, again, just another reason why LeBron gets his friends to come play on the team with him. And he's no Avery Bradley. He's not good at defense. He's not the shooter he used to be. This could really hurt their chances. And you know what? With the Clippers having the team that they do, I think that they could actually win the West now. Because Avery Bradley was a really good defender, and when you need somebody to guard either Kawhi or Paul George, and you still need somebody down low, J.R. Smith isn't the person to do it. So, and Alex Caruso also isn't the person to do it.
You mean
Where's
the
Carolina
bald
in the NBA?
eagle, Alex Bald Eagle Caruso
So,
isn't
yeah.
going to carry the Lakers to a championship?
Nope. So my What a Putz is Los Angeles Lakers, and by extension, LeBron James.
What I did really like, before we get to TJ, what I did really like was, like, the moment it got announced, they're like, J.R. Smith is joining the Lakers, and they dropped this, like, practice video that he showed where he just, like, it's in real time, but it seems like slow motion because, like, all those guys run really slow. But it's him, like, just doing this, like, dumb little one step and getting around this, like,
I saw that.
looking dude to go for a layup. And I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to be hyped because a dude who's like 5'6" and weighs like 250 pounds can't guard J.R. Smith. And it's like, all of a sudden, this is the guy who's going to win the West for the Lakers. Like, God.
Did you guys see the Fresh Prince meme where it's like Will Smith standing in the empty house and the caption is J.R. Smith at the Staples Center?
I did see that.
All right, TJ, your What a
Alrighty.
Putz nominee.
So I don't know. Yeah, I haven't been here for a couple weeks, so I don't know if this has been brought up. But my What a Putz goes to Roger Goodell.
Okay.
In spite of everything that is happening with Black Lives Matter and the racial injustices, for him to come out and say that he fully supports Colin Kaepernick and everything that has they have stood for over the past few years, and for him to say that, that he's encouraging owners to go sign him, get him on the team, which like just 2 years ago, he was bashing them for kneeling during the national anthem. Degrading all that he was doing during his time with the 49ers, trying to get, active roles going on for injustices in the United States. And then all of a sudden he pulls a full 180 and says, yeah, you should go sign him. I'm a big fan of that. So, I mean, for him to just, I mean, he's not doing it because that's what he thinks. He's doing it because it's what he feels like he has to do, or he's going to lose his entire league. Because without African Americans, you have no NFL.
Yeah.
But I do have an
Mahomes
honorable
said
mention.
something about it.
You do have an honorable mention. Well, that was the other thing that really pissed me off was like the league didn't take it seriously until Patrick Mahomes said something.
Yeah.
Because he's the new star. Like that pissed me off so bad. But TJ, you said you had an honorable mention?
I do. And it's the MLB draft. And it's
Oh, you froze.
sitting here unsigned. And I have to go back to Carroll. Did I freeze?
You did
Yeah.
freeze. You said the MLB draft and then it cut out.
Oh, well, the MLB draft for not putting me on a team, nobody picking me. Now I got to go back to Carroll for a 5th year and go play college baseball and give them more of my money that they don't need. So MLB, suck it.
I hear the Milwaukee Milkmen is looking for players. So if you ever wanted
But
to...
okay, fun fact. If I was to graduate this year, I was going to go try out for the Milwaukee Milkmen.
Were you really?
That is a fun fact.
If you guys don't know the Milwaukee Milkmen, you should look them up because I think their like inaugural uniform was them like bespeckled like cows, or they had like a uniform that was like that. I don't even know if they're AAA or AA or
Brady,
single A. They're, like,
Brady,
so
you remember
far
going
down
to
the
Salt
list.
Dogs games in
I
Lincoln?
do.
Yeah, they're in the same league as the Lincoln Salt Dogs because I wanted to watch Milwaukee Milkmen play Salt
I love
Dogs
that.
last
I love
summer.
that. I love
They've got people dressed up in all white milkmen costumes and they run around. They're so extra. I love it. Like
It's
they're
so
so cringy that I love it.
It's so great because, like,
Minor
honestly,
league baseball
we
for
could
you
do
people.
a segment where we just list off minor league baseball team names because some of those are the funniest fucking things that you've ever seen. In your
Oh,
life.
Yeah,
There's
Trash
one-
Pandas.
The Trash Pandas. You have the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp. You've got like some of these are just so dumb it hurts. And then it's so upsetting because then you get like the Iowa Cubs, and it's just like the Cubs is
Like real original.
Yeah, you're like, come on, like call themselves like the Iowa Kevin Costners after Field of Dreams.
Here's a couple for you. The Richmond Flying Squirrels.
Love it.
The New Orleans Baby Cakes. That one's my favorite.
Love
I
that.
love that one. The Birmingham Rumble Ponies. And how do you say that? I'm not even going to say that one. We're going to move on to the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp. I
Jacksonville
love the
Jumbo
Jumbo Shrimp.
The Montgomery Biscuits, the Toledo Mud Hens, the El Paso Chihuahuas, the Modesto Nuts. Just great. Just what a great name.
Nuts.
You have the New Orleans Baby Cakes.
Big fan.
You've got it's so dumb but so funny. The Pensacola Blue Wahoos. Like I love these names. I love these names. Go support minor league baseball. Like when that eventually comes back, go support that stuff because they need your support. But we appreciate everybody for tuning in. The next episode we're going to close out the rest of the AFC West. We have the Raiders on the next episode. Then we're going to follow them up with the Chargers and then the Rams after that. So we're going to get to the Los Angeles cities here. But before we do that, we're going to talk about the Las Vegas Raiders now. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Follow us on all the shits on Facebook and Twitter and Spotify and SoundCloud and Reddit and YouTube and Fourth String Sports Podcast, and then email us at fourthstringsp@gmail.com. Again, that's fourthstringsp@gmail.com. We'll read off some of the more intriguing ones or the ones that actually have questions and stuff. So I appreciate everybody for tuning in and for listening. Boys, you have any closing thoughts before we wrap up or before we end the show?
No, I don't think I have anything this week.
Nope.
Happy belated America Day.
Happy belated America Day. So we appreciate everybody for tuning in. Continue to like us and follow us on everything. We're seeing our numbers kind of slowly climb, especially on some of the other stuff like on Spotify and stuff. So we really appreciate that from everybody.
The subscribe button. It's like it's right there. It's down there.
Somewhere on
Over there.
YouTube.
Maybe there.
Here, it says
People
subscribe.
on
It's
the
big and it's red, it
podcast
says
format are
subscribe,
going to
so
be very confused.
just follow all that shits. So, no, we appreciate everybody for tuning in. TJ, thank you so much for coming on the show. You are more than welcome
Absolutely.
anytime. And
Always
with
a delight.
Yes.
Thank
and
you for having me.
with NBA basketball coming back, we got the scrimmage schedule was announced. So we'll be able to watch some of those. And then with the official basketball returning at the end of the month here, I'm so excited that it's going to be back.
Oh,
We are
excited.
4 weeks away.
but
less
baseball
than
starts
4
in like
weeks.
what, a week, 2 weeks?
I think regular baseball starts in just over 3. There's
Oh yeah, because
scrimmages
it's
and
the
stuff.
week before.
Yeah.
It's the week before basketball picks up.
Spring training starts, I think, next week for baseball. So
Major league sports are back in America.
It's coming
Fuck
back,
yeah.
man. And then we didn't even talk about the fact that the NFL officially announced to cut 2 preseason games, week 1 and 4, but the NFL Players Association voted unanimously to just get rid of preseason this season completely. So that's stuff that we're going to keep an eye on. But we appreciate everybody for tuning in, for listening. We thank everybody for being on the show. Again, quick shout out to Dusty, who is our cousin. He was supposed to be on the show here today to talk about the Chiefs. Unfortunately, something came up. He couldn't be on it. Dusty, we love you. You know, we hope that your Chiefs do as well as we say that they will. We just hope that if they play the Packers in the Super Bowl that they lose. But we appreciate everybody for tuning in and listening. Everybody have a great night, and thank you for listening to the Fourth String Sports podcast.